Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Bear Guys and 2T Fitness. Today's episode is brought to you by the Sounds in Cinema podcast.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the Indiana Jones edition. Today, we're talking Temple of Doom, and you're listening to fantastic music. No matter what Tom thinks the conductor stole it from himself from. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. The melodious sounds you're about to hear are Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Defend yourself, Tom.
We are going to die.
You know, when you watch the behind-the-scenes stuff on Indiana Jones, because you don't think of Harrison Ford automatically as a funny person. But he's fucking funny. And when you watch behind-the-scenes stuffs, and when you see, like, the choices he's making as an actor in this movie, he is a funny man.
Well, I didn't do the full quotable there.
Yeah.
Because it goes, we are going to die, Muppet face, and scene.
Yeah. I love that Muppet face.
It's a masterclass in facial acting.
It makes me laugh every single time I watch the movie.
And it comes sort of minutes after he does the same with hand acting.
Mm-hmm. With the fist? The bugs?
His hand. It made me want like a Zidane style documentary where you're just following Harrison Ford's hands around a movie.
Yeah. Well, you've talked about that before. His pointing acting. And how you would always want to try to put that in a Harrison Ford point into your roles.
Every chance I get,
yeah.
And that if the director will let me, I'll do the double point. Unfortunately, there's not much license for that. There's not many scripts I've done where they're going 7, 3, 10. That's a triple point, to be fair.
Yeah. I'll just say right now, I think this movie has my favorite Harrison Ford point of all time. Pointing acting, yeah.
Well, I might as well say it now. I don't think this is the peak of Harrison Ford as a film actor. For me, that period is the late 80s to the early 90s. So basically the Problem Wife trilogy of Presumed Innocent, Frantic, and The Fugitive.
Yeah.
That's where I feel like he's best as a film actor, but Temple of Doom, I think, is the peak of his film stardom.
Oh, that's interesting.
And we'll talk about I'll give specific examples of that as we go, but I just wanted to thumbnail that there.
Yeah, I mean, because when you think about it,
he's got 3 separate iconic looks in this movie.
Yeah.
And if that's not film stardom, I don't know what is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was going to say time-wise, too, because you have some iconic roles back-to-back, because this is 84, and 83 he's finishing up with Han Solo in Return of the Jedi. And so that's two iconic roles back-to-back.
He shed those extra carbonite pounds, and
right.
he's...
But when you think about it, he did that twice.
Physical condition.
He did that twice because he did it with Empire and Raiders as well. So,
yeah, not to mention, isn't when was Blade Runner? 82.
Mm-hmm.
So he did Blade Runner in the middle of that.
Yeah, right.
Kind of, another kind of iconic.
Later iconic. It wasn't popular at the time.
Somewhat franchise.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, definitely the most famous roles he did are in this period. I just think the work he does on screen is better slightly later into the 80s. which coincidentally is exactly the same the way I feel about Sean Connery. I think they peak at exactly the same moment.
That's funny. Yeah.
And so, you know, it's almost kismet that both of them are
Well, when I
came
think
together at the peak of both their acting prowess.
right, when I think of, back to back, maybe not that the movies were back to back. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But Last Crusade, Sean Connery, followed by Hunt for Red October, Sean Connery, where you kind of introduce this new look, hair, flat tops, the real master wig class portion of his career.
And of course, all that's coming off the Untouchables.
Sure.
So, again, I think, it's that there's a kind of they're both in the middle of the best film trilogy of their lives.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, it's not a trilogy based around a particular franchise, but just a trilogy of their best films.
Yeah. And well, this first sequel, Temple of Doom, was supposed to be the middle part of a trilogy that ended up becoming something much more.
Well, and this is interesting too because this is a prequel.
Yeah.
Should probably say that up front.
Sure.
And I think they thought that would solve a lot of narrative problems, and it does.
I think it does. Yeah, I think there's things that it does help.
Until you think about it.
Yes.
Because I understand the impulse to do it as a prequel, because then it becomes a standalone adventure. You don't have to deal with the baggage of what happened in Raiders.
Sure.
But at the same time, he's already gone through this adventure, so what happens in Raiders should be no surprise to him.
Yeah.
And yet it is. It really does seem like Raiders is the first time he's gone through any of these experiences.
The craziness. He has a line in that movie about not believing in religious hocus pocus.
Yeah.
He sees a lot of hocus pocus in this film.
That's right. It's interesting that I think they only half thought through the problem.
Sure.
But also, I mean, I think we'll expand the prequel conversation as we go, because there are elements of prequels in the next movie. There's references to the prequel TV series in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, so they're testing the waters here for young Indiana Jones, for sure.
Maybe, yeah, probably. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking our favorite in the series, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, a 1984 film directed by Steven Spielberg. Perhaps you've heard of him. Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., Schindler's List, and on and on.
I know we've already burned one Jiminy Glick reference on the ranking episode.
So what a good one, though.
He did do an interview with Spielberg where he asked him, "When are you gonna do the big one?"
Yeah, I remember.
The one that really
connects
with
the audience.
And I love Spielberg's reaction, because you can see him sort of like his gut reaction is, "How dare you say that to me? I'm Steven Spielberg." And then he thinks around that and how bad a color that is on him, and then he's just like, "Oh, okay."
Oh,
you went there, okay.
I will choose to play along.
Yeah,
even though it wasn't my first thought.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, this movie, 77% on Rotten Tomatoes. I find this interesting for at least, certainly for these two first sequels, this and Last Crusade. They're not gangbusters in terms of what reviewers thought at the time. So this won 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, but this movie was just as popular as Raiders. Budget of $28 million, opening weekend of $25.3 million. In the USA, $179.8 million, and in the world, $333.1 million. And that's 1984.
Wow, those conservative Christian parents really didn't do anything to make this movie more popular.
Yeah, they didn't give a shit enough to keep kids out of the movie theaters.
Yeah, or they inadvertently brought them into the theaters.
Yeah, right.
when they weren't considering going in the first place.
All right. Well, where to start? I mean, my first.
Oh, I know where to start.
Okay. What were you going to
With
say?
one of the most famous logo conversions in the history of cinema.
Yeah, I love it so much.
The Paramount logo, which turns into some kind of a
Gong.
mount. Well, I mean, in each of the, well, I can't say that anymore. Up until the Kingdom and the Crystal Skull, the Paramount logo would turn into some kind of
Mountain.
peak.
Peak. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is an inversion of the of the original because
Yeah.
it's just it's a picture of a mountain on a gong,
Which I love.
Nobody saw coming.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the reasons I love it so much.
That's surprise number one of the movie, full of
It's that
surprises.
second one. There is an inversion and a surprise. Also, and I think I mentioned this in the ranking episode when we were talking about how serialized this movie feels.
Yeah,
And it starts right at the top with the music.
completely.
The music cue with the reveal of the gong is very serialized. Feels very 1930s serial.
I also like that it's an inverted optical illusion. So the original goes from like a picture of a mountain, which is as big as it is,
Yeah.
to an actual mountain, which is several thousand times bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is like we just go from actual size to actual. So the
Yeah.
the image of the mountain on the gong is pretty much what the Paramount logo is.
Sure.
It's an actual size mountain.
Yeah.
And we'll keep playing with those size distinctions throughout the next
Yeah,
couple of
absolutely.
movies.
Well, here's my second note. One of the reasons I love this movie, well, maybe I'm taking it a bridge too far. I don't know that this is why I love the movie,
I don't think
but
so.
it's something I respect about this movie, especially as a sequel. It has the courage to change font and color and type for its titles.
Mm-hmm.
And none of the other sequels can say that.
They all default to the Raiders font.
Yeah.
And it's something I admire about the film as well, because first of all, it's a very bold choice. Again, in a
movie
scene and
filled
movie which will
with
be
bold
full
choices.
of bold choices. But this is the kind of the titular one. Rather, it's good because it's an inversion of the original font that remains in the spirit of matinee adventure films.
Sure.
And also shows you that this is going to be an enhanced version of that by upping the color and spectacle of the title.
Mm-hmm.
So it's working on all those different levels, and I've got one more logo note before we get too far into this.
Okay.
By too far, I mean I don't know. We're in second 3 right now.
Yeah.
There's a logo within a logo here, because the hitting of the gong
Yeah.
is a reference back to the Arthur J. Rank logo, which was the like a British populist film company from the 50s and 60s,
Whoa.
who kind of made a lot of the movies that Spielberg and Lucas would have grown up with.
Okay.
So we have a meta logo here as well, which I think is beautiful. Yeah, and then even before the title comes up, Spielberg's future wife steps out of the most vagina-looking dragon's mouth I've ever seen. So
For sure.
we're on Freudian ground before the movie even begins.
Yeah. Yeah. And sorry, had a garbage disposal. I guess
I hear that.
must be my downstairs neighbors. Maybe it was
Oh,
them
great.
all along. Maybe I'm blaming the wrong people.
You murdered that woman for nothing.
That was worth it. All right. So
Everything sequel, The Trial.
are you on my page about this? Well, first of all, I want to say something. Because I first of all, I was going to say that I love this credit sequence.
Yes.
I love everything about it.
Yeah.
But I was also going to say, I think one thing that's interesting about all Indiana Jones movies is that they have a cold open without a cold open.
Sure. Yeah. It's exactly. It's it's the idea of a standalone opening scene rather than a pre-titles cold open.
Right. They
I
do
think.
the James Bond thing, but it's an
Yeah.
inversion of the James Bond thing because they don't. It's not a cold open. They have the credits and then they have the kind of cold-ish open.
It's more
The
like Never Say
lukewarm
Never
open.
Again.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
That's what they're going for. It was a year earlier, and Connery was in it.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I love. If you're asking me how do I love this, let me count the ways.
Okay. Good.
I mean, first of all, this movie's been around for so long. I think occasionally we need to remind ourselves of how bold a choice it is to begin the sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark with a Chinese language version of a classic Broadway
yeah,
musical
right.
tap number. And that's just the choice. That doesn't even get the execution is even bolder than the choice here.
Absolutely.
Because rather than, the fact that this happens, the fact that this opens the movie is one thing. The fact that Spielberg decides that he's going to do a tribute to Busby Berkeley's utopian musicals of the 30s, as demonstrated by the Gold Digger series and 42nd Street, and create an entirely impossible cinematic space within this nightclub.
Yeah, right. That's the thing. That's one of the things I love about it. Is that this is supposed to be happening for a group of people sitting in a restaurant that couldn't possibly be happening, but that sort of magical realism aspect of it is very appealing to me.
And that's Spielberg talks in the making of it. It's really interesting. He says, this is an expression of my desire to make a movie musical.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that he's only achieved that ambition
just a couple years ago. Yeah, right.
It's crazy, but this, you can really tell, his commitment to this musical sequence is to essentially treat it like a self-contained movie.
Mm-hmm.
And to observe all the stylistic conventions of that genre,
right?
While he's doing it. But something I did.
It's so interesting because he's flexing a different muscle for this one thing.
But something I never noticed, and something that I realized needed to be in there, even though I'd never noticed it before. Did you ever notice Willie stumbling?
Oh, I notice it every time, and I love it.
Okay.
I love that I
think it's great.
I love that they keep it. It's so fantastic.
Because it starts to introduce us to the character behind the performer.
Exactly.
As early as we can in the movie, but also it folds back into the world of Indiana Jones, where our heroes and heroines are fallible.
A little bit sloppy, right?
a little bit sloppy, and color-wise, there's so much going on with the reds and the blues. There's different levels of quality of color. Douglas Slocum's cinematography is off the charts.
Well, ever since watching The Fabelmans, I couldn't help. Did you watch that movie, by the way?
I have not seen that movie.
Okay, so there's a moment in that where young Steven Spielberg has shot an action film, and when he plays it, I forget wherever he's playing it, but he's playing it for friends and family somewhere, or people in the neighborhood, I think. And people are firing guns, and you're seeing what kind of look like muzzle flares from the guns, and nobody could figure out how he did it. And I think there was a terrible fight or something, and his dad's driving him home, and he said, so how did you do that? And he goes, I just put pinholes where all the guns are so the light would come through it. And I couldn't help but think about that while I was watching this dance sequence with the stars. Like, it looks like outer space stars flashing before our very eyes.
He's going above and beyond and actually trying to reproduce the texture of film of those early 1930s musicals. Yeah. And, so he's taking it all to a level that, I mean, it's a mission statement for the movie, because this movie is all about excess.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming out of the gates telling you this is the kind of movie we're going to be, but it's a studious tribute to the kind of film that's being referenced, which is also what this movie and the Indiana Jones movies is all about.
Sure.
The fact that they picked anything goes. It sets the tone for the outrageousness of this movie. Yeah, and it's the other thing about it is, and again, this is why the furore around Nuke the Fridge irritates me so much. We're breaking the fourth wall from moment one.
Yeah, sure.
Willie is singing this into the camera. I mean, this movie is making no pretense that it's not a movie.
Yeah.
And that everything that happens within it happens in the cinematic fantasy world. And I don't know. I think when you come out of the gates with that, it can't be a topic of criticism later on in the series.
Well, what do you...
When you've established that
Uh-huh.
early on in the first thing that happens in the sequels is we abandon all semblance of realism.
I mean, I think that I look at them a little bit differently, but fine. Sorry. I don't see Willie Scott staring down the barrel of the camera the same thing as a 1.5-mile refrigerator lead-lined refrigerator roll as equal parts.
It's actually more plausible.
No, I think he's dead inside that refrigerator.
Well, what about what about those poor people inside the dragon's mouth? It's fucking inner space in there for them. They don't suffocate. That's what I mean. We're happy to buy into... Well, I don't know if everyone was happy to buy into
I think Steven
certainly
Spielberg makes us buy into it. Also, I don't think
Yes.
we're necessarily saying it's an actual dragon's mouth. Obviously, it's ridiculous in terms of what space the club they're at actually has.
Yeah.
But I don't mind that he gets to go
If they
into
can
our minds of
if all those people-
imagination.
If all those people can survive in that tiny space there, then Indy can survive in a lead-lined fridge. That was an important detail you left out.
I said lead line. Don't tell me
you
what
did?
I
Okay.
did and didn't say. I know what I said. It's still stupid.
Yeah, and so is this. Let's embrace stupid.
No, this is fun stupid.
I think that's fun stupid as well, but though I'm not making that argument quite yet.
I'll say.
But anyway, we can come back. I'm sure we can come back to a consensus over the
Sure.
the Bondian touches that are all over this opening scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, yeah, well, let's press on in that vein and talk about Fancy Indy.
well, Fancy Indy's wearing the tuxedo from Goldfinger, which means he's wearing his dad's clothes. And of course, the idea of this is a standalone opening scene.
Sure.
That same idea that Spielberg talks about starting this movie 2/3 of the way through Indy's last adventure. I think that's what some of the Bond cold opens were going for as well. And then the language of having the villain, the henchman, these Bond archetypes. The ally, Wuhan is your classic Bond ally.
Oh, so good.
Who the following year would be an actual Bond ally. He would
Is
be,
that
not
View to a Kill?
Not Felix Leiter in A View to a Kill,
Yeah.
because they didn't have the courage to make Felix Leiter Asian. And it doesn't hurt that Harrison Ford is in the best shape of his life and that tuxedo fits him like a glove.
Oh man, I can't even begin to tell you.
Is this the handsomest?
Yeah,
he ever
like
was?
the from the second he's on screen in this movie, I so wanted to be him.
Yeah.
I remember friend of the show, Pam Flora. It's still a funny joke between the two of us. We went to a homecoming dance together, and I wanted that tuxedo. So I rented that, and still to this day, every time that picture is shown to me, I get pissed because something on the actual lapels, they were crooked or something. It was like kind of bunched up. And I was like, nobody even noticed that before they snapped the picture. I don't look at all like Indiana Jones.
I thought you were going to say...
I don't look suave and debonair.
I thought you were going to say, I got mad because Indy's wearing my tuxedo.
No.
When in fact he's wearing his father's tuxedo.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, it's not. There's two great things about this use of the Bond imagery. One is that it's actually used in a way to articulate the key differences between James Bond and Indiana Jones, which is not something that fan service understands anymore. But the other side of it that I really like is it's kind of a 50-50 split between the Bond film and the 1930s gangster film.
Right.
Like, the imagery is like right on the precipice between the two.
Right.
Because we're simultaneously playing with the idea of gangsters and moles, heavies and nightclubs.
Yeah.
If you look at that one, the heavy set henchman on, I think it's the right hand side of the frame behind Lao Che, and he's got like 70s style, what do you call them, sideburns, and something of an afro, but he's dressed like he's from the 1930s.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
yeah.
That is, it's like it's literally split down the middle, and so I appreciate that it's like it's Bond cut with another kind of genre reference, but I think it's also important that it's very clear that Indy is playing the facade of Bond.
Well, and so
but is revealed to be a very different kind of hero.
Exactly. So he's a different kind of hero because, you know, in the first movie, he's trying to get this golden statue. It feels very sacred. This cross in the next movie that he's been after his whole life, again, feels very sacred. And this one, the guy wants a fucking diamond. Diamond, Lau. It's for the deal was for the diamond.
Unfortunately, that's been retconned in Young Indiana Jones. That is also the result of a lifelong quest, sadly.
But when you watch just the movie, not taking Young Indiana Jones into account, it just feels a bit more shallow. And I kind of like it. I don't know why. It appeals to me, this Indiana Jones. I don't like the sanctimonious Jones in the next movie with this belongs in a museum. I like this Indiana Jones that says, fuck it. They'll just put it in a museum where it'll collect dust.
Well, I mean, it's picking up on the moral ambiguity of Indiana Jones that was established in Raiders and kind of running with it. And in a way that, as you say, they walk back in the next movie. I mean, the first thing we see Indiana Jones do is hold a woman he just met hostage with a sharp instrument.
Yeah.
In a few minutes, he's going to punch a cigarette girl in the face.
Right in the mouth.
So, you know, this movie's making no apologies for the kind of man Indiana Jones is. And I love that they lead into the glamour, but they also lead into the sleaze simultaneously.
Sleaze right away. And with all these movies, the MacGuffin is going to be important, and they either choose them wisely or they don't. And there's always kind of...
Hey, I see what you did there.
They always kind of... there's always two MacGuffins. So there's always a front scene MacGuffin and then the movie MacGuffin. And I like that in this front scene, the MacGuffin goes from his diamond to the antidote.
I'm sorry, front scene MacGuffin sounds really filthy. I know exactly what you're describing, but when you said it out loud, it took on a totally different meaning. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's it. And again, it's like, you know, that was the MacGuffin of the last adventure.
Yeah, right.
That and because we know what happens at the end of the Raiders films, we know it's going to slip out of his hand. At the end of Raiders, it's going to slip out of his hand.
Sure.
And both of these MacGuffins are inversions of the Ark because they're lightweight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm just going to say the diamond because if I tell you the real name, it'll make you sad.
Okay.
Treasure of the Peacock's Eye. I said it, sorry.
That did make me sad.
And even Nahachi, you know, he's a real small guy.
Yeah, right.
The ashes of the... So they've inverted this... So, because you can fit, 3 of those Shankara stones in a handbag?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can put the diamond in your pocket.
Yeah.
You could, you know, as long as you're careful, you could sort of pour Nahachi into a flask. Take him.
Anybody got a funnel?
Anyone got a flask from my Nahachi?
Oh.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Shortly after this, I know what I wanted to go back to. Your opening comment about you were kind of referring to my comments about
John Williams music, yes.
I think this is one of his most distinctive scores.
Oh, good.
Which means a lot coming from me. And I love that in this sequence where they have the Lazy Susan, which is turning. There's a MacGuffin on each side.
Yeah, right.
And I love the fact that Williams goes for a literal soundscape.
Yeah.
It's the screeching sound of the table as it turns, which is the kind of audio philosophy that I refer to as cartoon mouse stairs.
It's good.
What's the sound of a cartoon mouse climbing stairs? Yeah. So it's literal. There's only one sound that you could do with it.
Sure.
And he is served the swampiest looking glass of champagne I have ever seen.
Oh yeah. But I love the moment because you're watching that Lazy Susan go back and forth and it's not on there. So when you're paying attention, it's one of the henchmen is putting it on.
Yeah.
As the diamond comes his way, you know, those small moments are fun.
But the color and consistency of it tells you, the audience, that there's poison in it.
It's bad.
So not only is Indy behind, not only is our hero in this movie behind the 8-ball, he's also behind the audience.
Yeah.
At this point, because he has no sense that he's being poisoned either in world or we all know more than Indy.
And we know more than him.
One of the things that makes him one of the best cinematic heroes.
Sure,
we're always one step ahead of him.
When he says something like, "Are you developing a sense of humor, or am I going deaf?" You know that he realizes he might be in trouble, and yet his arrogance is still such that he could say that line.
Another thing that makes Indy not necessarily unique but different from most mainstream Hollywood heroes, in a good way, is the Frasier dimension. I've got no other way to put it.
What do you mean?
I mean that, in the same...
You mean his arrogance, or...?
Well, the same way we respond to Frasier is we love him as a character, but we're happy to see him taken down a peg.
Yeah, sure.
And he not only does he come in with this sort of
bravado
the bravado of the champagne guy, but he's also trying to one up Willie's puns.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just he's insufferable.
Right.
And so when he gets poisoned, there's a little bit of satisfaction from the audience that he's been put in his place. And you were saying you don't think of Harrison Ford necessarily as a funny guy, but even this early in the movie, he's mastering the comedy he's given.
Oh yeah.
And I think his reaction, the way that once he's poisoned, before he knows he's poisoned, he's trying to assert a veneer of suaveness, and he's sweating, and he can barely speak. And I love the way he plays that. I think, again, it's a dimension that would be missed in most characterizations of adventure heroes.
Yeah, I mean, once the melee starts, there's just nothing but fun watching a hero try to do heroic things, but a little out of balance, a little out of tune.
Yeah.
Nothing really quite so well. Being shoved on the cart and not be able to grab the vial. Dropping balloons and dodging bullets, but all of it a little awkwardly. It's really fun to watch.
Yeah. We made reference to this in the ranking episode, but it's worth mentioning again the introduction and exit of Wuhan in this scene. It's just it's masterfully done. You care
about him instantly, and you're sad to see him go.
Yeah, which that's writing, isn't it?
Right.
And it's
such simple stuff.
They construct his dialogue.
I was just gonna say that the construction of the dialogue. I go first, Indy.
Yeah.
That says so much about how much and how long they've known each other. How much they've done together. It's really smart.
If you do your job properly, you get the dialogue right. You don't need to clunk up your movie with screen time establishing characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also get a glimpse into the full-on horror movie that this is going to become when the one of the henchmen gets staked like a vampire.
Yeah.
With a kebab.
Yeah.
I mean, the garish tone is right there from the get-go.
Yes.
And then we get, the airplane style comedy of punching the cigarette girl.
Mhm.
The sort of, it's kind of Mel Brooks movie level comedy. And then we're sort of back in a musical almost, right?
Yeah, right.
Indy's leaping around.
He's leaping around.
kind
They're
of-
dropping balloons.
The orchestra strikes up.
Like nothing, nothing really thrilled me more when I was a kid than watching him behind the gong, grabbing for that sword, cutting the wire, the bullets hitting the gong itself, and jumping out that window. All of it made me,
yeah.
you wanted to be Indiana Jones, which I've said before. You wanted to be the man when you watch him do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it has that kind of serial quality of the bullets are flying, but they're not too dangerous. not for our hero.
Yeah. It's a dance, right?
Right, yeah.
It's the idealized utopian version of the scene.
Mm-hmm.
When violence gets too dangerous, it becomes dance. When it's something looks dangerous, it doesn't sound dangerous, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really ironically, for such an excessive sequence, it's really carefully put together.
Sure.
And then, we're already deep into the Bond references because Indy throws a symbol
Yeah, right.
at a henchman like Oddjob. And then suddenly almost like more balloon, instead of the balloons coming down, ninjas and gangsters start to seemingly fall from the ceiling.
Right.
It's like Spielberg is there going, we want every kind of action movie violence. Ninjas, gangsters. Just have them piling on the balloons.
Throw every stereotype you can.
Oh, well, we've not even
We'll
begun that.
get to that, I'm sure.
And there is, obviously Ben Bird is the sound meister behind this movie.
I think I said it before, but there's no better gunshot sound than the gunshot sounds of an Indiana Jones movie.
But particularly, I can remember from my childhood viewings of this movie, the sound design of the bullets hitting the gong as it rolls.
Yeah.
Because it's like every Ben Bird choice, it's not the obvious choice, but it's the right one.
Mm-hmm.
It's not cartoon mouse stairs. It's like, because it's like in your head you go, yeah, it should go. But there's no scientific reason why it would.
Sure.
It's like audio, and of course the Scarface.
I was just gonna say the glee
machine
with
gun
which
guy.
the glee with which the henchman is firing that gun. Fantastic. Well, and then it's out the window and we meet Short Round.
We certainly do. I mean, I remember listening to the Indiana Jones Minutes episode, which was featuring former guest of the show, Pete the Retailer.
Mm-hmm.
When Short Round arrives in the movie, it's like, wow, there are 2 Jar Jars in this movie. And listen, it's like, we'll get into the.
How dare he?
Well, there are 2 divisive sidekicks in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
in Indiana Jones fandom. They're both in the same movie, which doesn't help the arguments for them. But
I'll stick up for both of them.
I will stick up for both of them as well. But I just want to say that a lot of Willie's dialogue, actually a lot of Willie and Short Round's dialogue, translates very easily into Gungan. You can really imagine Jar Jar Binks saying, "These are Nahachi, a real small guy." But no, that's
all right. That's the one and only one I'm gonna give you.
It's low hanging fruit.
I'll say.
But it also feels like one of those kind of movie producer satires. It's like we're doing a sequel to Indiana Jones. We need a ditzy blonde and an Asian kid. But I mean, this is we talk all the time about sequels introducing children.
So that's what I wanted to bring up,
into the
right?
franchise formula where they were not there before.
And it's I think we talked in the past about how it's usually a bad idea to bring a kid into a sequel.
Yeah,
Isn't that the overall narrative we've talked about before?
it's dangerous.
Yeah,
it's a
right,
slippery slope.
right. And so,
You end
and
up
I
with
think that's how
Ghostbusters Afterlife.
right, and I think that's how most people feel about this movie, but I completely disagree with it.
Yeah.
And part of it, part of it is because of how great a performer Ke Huy Quan is. Boy, we said we'd have a trouble with that, and I couldn't get it out of my mouth hole.
But before we went on there, we simultaneously asked each other the classic white person question.
How do you say that? Well, I'm so used to saying Ki, but I guess it's Ke Huy Quan.
Great.
Lesson over.
Let's move on. To be fair, after our house party series, no one's expecting
How could
a
they?
great deal of racial sensitivity from the two of us. But neither is this movie, so we're
so
in good
we're
company.
fine.
Because I was, at the point where you're going, wow, it's great. There's an Asian lead to the movie. What a great progressive moment. And then throughout this car chase sequence, there's lots of dubbed Asian noises.
Yeah.
There's a rickshaw driver who is kind of, dubbed in a way that even in a 30s movie, you'd be like, can they do that?
Even just that guy that gets stuck on the hood of the car with the look before he's thrown off of it.
It's the kind of, and again, I like, it's that get out of jail free card that the Spielbergs and the Lucases of the world always pull when they're accused of racism, is we're just trying to recreate the films of our youth which are racist.
Yeah, right.
Or the culture of our youth. And like that's kind of it's kind of defensible in that way, because the first thing I see when I saw that rickshaw driver is I think of Tintin comics growing up, which of course then Spielberg will later do a film adaptation of. And it's just like, yeah, this is what those comics look like. This is what he's remembering.
Mm-hmm.
Should he be remembering it? That's a different question. But if in terms of the film, the cultural language he's pulling
Sure,
from,
right, yeah.
That's the emphasis.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's right or not is a different question. And also, it wants you. We've had 2 Wilhelm screams in just over 10 minutes into the film. This film wants you to know it's a film. It's not making any bones about trying to represent the world as it is at any point.
Yeah, right.
And I think it announces that sufficiently for you not to take offense at it.
Okay.
I'm saying that as a person for whom Indian food is my favorite cuisine in the entire world, and so that's big of me to say that. Given what this movie did to the image of Indian food,
You're giving yourself a little Busta Rhymes pat on the back there.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Oh, we haven't heard from him for a while, have we?
Yeah.
He's always been there.
Well, I mean, all of it, to me, also just spells out a great deal of fun. I love them falling into the car. I love the shooting. Despite the fact that it's prefaced with lots of screams and I cracked a nail, her dropping the gun to me is very funny because it's going to play in later. And then you get get Dan Aykroyd. What's not to like?
Well, they're sort of established. The central trio are established as the Three Stooges. You've got 3 variations of slapstick going on.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Indy's sloppiness, Willie's gun fumbling, and Short Round's too short to drive the car. It's
right.
Just different colors of physical comedy going on in this car scene.
But what I like about it, I mean, it's funny because as you describe it, it doesn't sound very deft. But I think it's shot and filmed in a deft way, in which, like...
Well, yes.
Spielberg...
I don't know if it's shot and filmed in a deft way. It's performed in a deft way.
Okay, yeah, but I think wrapped up in that is what Spielberg chooses to show you, how he shows it to you, and also it's going at such a quick pace...
Yeah. True.
That I think that helps it a lot in terms of, we're doing lots of silly stuff, but we're doing it all at once and quickly. right over each other. Like if you don't have time to roll your eyes.
Yeah.
If it was something that bothered you.
And I do in Last Crusade, and I think that's something that I realized watching them back to back here is that the Last Crusade waits for you to react to the punchline.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie never does that. You have to accept that punchline either worked for you or you didn't. We're moving on to another one.
Right? Yeah.
But something that starts to happen because this again, it's hard to remember because this movie's been around for so long, but all we had before this movie was Raiders of the Lost Ark. This opening scene is so different from anything in Raiders.
Yeah, right.
Like it almost if Indiana Jones weren't there and it didn't say Indiana Jones on the screen, you would almost think
it was in a different movie
franchise.
because there's no cobwebs yet, there's no dust, there's no
and we're
dirt.
you're right, we're entirely urban as well.
Right.
That's another thing which we're never entirely urban in Raiders at any point. Suburban is the closest we get.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where the slow release of the Indiana Jones convention starts to happen in the movie. Not a moment too soon, right? After a wholly original opening, we start to settle back into the formula. You hear strains of the indie theme.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting on a plane.
We're gonna have a map.
We're gonna have the laser line map coming up. But Dan Aykroyd again feeding off the broadly overtly comedic tone of the film. It's they've got those back and forth cameos going from Blues Brothers in 1941.
Right.
This is another one of those. It's interesting,
but you know what? Also, I like is that the entire opening kind of cold scene is punctuated with another sloppy Indiana Jones moment. Because better luck next time, Lao Che, and he closes the door and it says Lao Che on it. You know he's fucked.
It's like I love that they styled that joke after like Looney Tunes. That's how it would be done in a Bugs Bunny cartoon, right?
Right.
It's perfect. But again, it's the hero who's behind the 8-ball and the audience.
Yeah.
It's a totally different idea of a movie protagonist. And that's what makes Indiana Jones special.
Mm-hmm.
Especially at this time when we're used to slick, infallible heroes.
Right.
And he's not only fallible, he has no idea.
He's clueless.
He's walking into a trap.
Yeah.
And it's it's like a if this is the end of the if this is the point in the Bond film where we go into the title sequence, this would effectively be ending with Bond plunging to his death.
Sure.
Which only happens in Die Another Day and Skyfall, which both of which were mistakes.
All right, settle down. Why don't we leave it there? We got through our opening scene, and we'll take a break and come back.
Yeah, Indy's about to have a costume change, so it's the perfect time for
Perfect time. We're about to meet Indiana Jones again.
Yeah, he gets into his Indiana
Old
Jones
style
costume.
Indiana Jones.
He's going to a Halloween party.
All right, everyone.
Or a school. If you might.
Listen to this great music, and we'll be right back.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook. They're on Instagram. They'll try new beers. They'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back. Tom and I are here discussing Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, a movie we love way more than other people.
What a great title as well.
Right?
Just hearing you say it now.
Yeah.
Because you're like, what is the Temple of Doom? And even though it is slightly disappointing what that turns out to be, still the promise of the title, like even when you know what the Temple of Doom is and that it's just, a slasher movie.
Right.
It's still tantalizing somehow.
I think we talked in the ranking episode about the general consensus for this series, and this isn't obviously a lot of data, but I just happened to mention this to like a millennial I work with, and so he felt compelled to reel off his list, his ranking.
Yeah, great.
And the first thing he said was, well, at the bottom of the list, of course, is not so good for you, Kingdom of Crystal Skull. But then the next on his list was Temple of Doom, and his highest was Last Crusade, even above Raiders.
Okay.
The general feeling I think the public has for this film, A, is wrong, and B, I don't get.
I'm glad you're keeping an open mind. As you were talking, something occurred to me that maybe part of that is that Last Crusade looks a lot more like the franchise movies that we've been used to since.
Maybe.
Like it feels like tonally, it's got a lot of the Marvel. I mean, it's the other way around. I think Marvel is feeding off movies like Last Crusade.
Yeah, right.
The mixture of kind of comedy and self-referentiality and
that bright, saturated kind of picture
yeah.
frame.
So maybe maybe it sort of feels like a more of a formative movie.
I'll say this for both
than it does for our generation.
Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade, though, because they're both 80 movies. And in our Patreon, we talked about this with the first Halloween movie. These movies look like they could have been shot yesterday.
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, there are moments with effects where you notice the effects, but
but you also know historically ILM was stretched very thin in those years.
Yeah, that's true.
You're very willing. You're willing to look past the odd matte painting that doesn't match kind of thing, because that's the reason that they couldn't do Final Frontier.
But I'll stick up for these movies in that way. I mean, whatever Spielberg is doing, he's shooting these movies in a way in which they don't seem to have that 80s luster that most movies, or well, not most, but a lot of movies from the 80s have, where you look at it and immediately think that's an 80s movie.
And I would say that is, and I think it's the same with Halloween. This is the benefit of referring back to an age of Hollywood that is kind of out of fashion at the time, but is going to come back into fashion because these movies are so good and people are going to be continually rediscovering them. And Spielberg, Carpenter, Lucas, they're of the generation that understands that the more you leech off this great timeless Hollywood storytelling, the less dated your movie
ends up, right?
I think that's crucial here.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, the pilots are jumping out of the airplane, and our heroes are fucked.
I love of all the specific Bond movies that they want to pull from, it's always fucking Moonraker. In this movie and the next movie, I'm like, why do you keep going back to the well of Moonraker? You have all these Bond movies to pick from. And I think, in the ending, I think it comes back to the kind of the psychoanalytic explanation that Spielberg really wanted to direct Moonraker. And he's going to do it whether they like it or not. Yeah. Whether Broccoli lets him do it or not. Yeah. Because this scene is the cold open of Moonraker right here. Mm-hmm. It's shot for shot. or done obviously better because Moonraker's a
It's
travesty.
so mad at Moonraker.
But he gets into his Indiana Jones costume. She makes the joke about the lion tamer, which is hilarious until they call back to it in the next movie. And the hat, the pulling the hat into sleep mode,
right? Oh
into
yeah,
the indie theme fanfare and the laser line map. I mean, it's pulling on the strings of the original just when you need it to, and then not lingering there longer than it needs to. And that's where I see, especially in this first act, that this is the perfect template for a sequel.
Yeah, right.
At this point of the movie, it's not put a foot wrong.
No, not one foot wrong, and it's really hitting on all cylinders in terms of what you want in a sequel, I think. And
it's just using the original as a skeleton, which is kind of what you want all sequels to do.
well, we've talked about it before. It's like, what do you want in a sequel? You want the same thing, but it has to be different, and that's what this movie's doing.
Well, speaking of different, this is where I think I begin to realize how distinctive the scoring is in this movie compared to, for me, other John Williams scores, but also just in terms of adding more to the treasure chest of Indiana Jones music, because we get this is the overture of the love theme, the da na 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 na, which is brand new.
Yeah.
And it just shows that Williams has still got musical tricks up his sleeve for the indie sequel, and he'll come up with about 4 or 5 new themes in this one movie.
Yeah, right.
And this is the first of those, and
even I notice it.
And I'll do in your words a reasonable facsimile of those.
Yes,
right. As we go through the movie.
By all means, but also I think it's funny because when you think about sequels or whatever movies in general and the lore that they carry on in the years, because some of the lines in this section are lines that are remembered. Hey lady, you call him Dr. Jones. That's an often repeated line, and I love that she's calling. I just like that she's calling him Mister. Like they haven't even introduced themselves. Mister, hey lady, you call him Dr. Jones.
My note here is 3 funny people doing
funny stuff. Exactly.
It's like you can criticize the emphasis on comedy, but you can't criticize the execution of it. Each of these actors can judge comedy really well.
I agree.
Which is kind of remarkable when you think that none of them are known specifically for that, and that one of them is a child.
Yes, right. His comedic timing, by the way, is impeccable.
I agree.
It's astounding that such a young performer would be that good.
And as we go into the movie, I think where the emotion lands in this movie, it's all to do with Short Round, which is clearly what he's in the movie to do, but it doesn't feel like tugging on your heartstrings.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Although I'm losing perspective as a new father, I'm losing perspective on that. I welled up about 5 or 6 times in this movie, and I don't know whether that's because the character of Short Round is done well, or whether I'm just susceptible to that kind of father-son, like surrogate father-son nonsense now.
I think it's because it's done well.
I think so too.
Because I have those moments too.
I'm not objective anymore.
I have those moments too, and I am not a father. Nobody can stand me.
Well, you're my control experiment, and the guy just won an Oscar, right? That didn't come from nowhere,
right?
Yeah, even though it felt like it did. Oh, and as well, like and I'm giving the at least at this point in the movie, the comedy of the movie short shrift, because this whole setup of do you know how to fly a plane?
Oh,
do you?
So good. That's what I was just gonna say.
Subverting the trope of the hero being suddenly able to do anything.
Right.
James Bond never talks about what vehicles he can
and cannot
operate.
But he can operate anything.
But he could but given the opportunity, he could operate anything.
Yeah.
So it just feels like a watershed moment in movie heroism.
Well, I also
just him,
from a
he looks genuinely. The great thing is he's genuinely asking the question. He's not
yes,
kind of
right. Not just
He's
that,
not crystal sculling
but
it.
there's
He's
that slight pause. I love the slight
Yeah.
pause between "you know how to fly, don't you?" and the slight pause of "what do I say in this moment? Can I tell a lie? No.
Yeah.
Do you?" There's nothing he can do.
And if you didn't know that the sound editor was Ben Burt, then the propellers sounding like the Millennium Falcon hyperdrive is going to tip you off at this point, I think.
Oh my goodness. Well, and then I want to talk about, because this is a 1984 movie.
Mm.
You mentioned the behind the scenes stuff, so I started trying to watch some of that. But the one thing I've never seen, what am I doing? I have a computer in my pocket. I should just look it up. But
No, well, not now.
Not
You're
now.
talking to me.
But one of the most amazing things I have ever seen in any movie is the three jumping out of the plane on the
Yeah.
raft. I still
terms
don't
of
know.
effects,
Yeah,
or- yeah.
I still don't know how
Yeah.
it's done. It looks like three
That
people
initial-
jumping out of a plane in a raft.
That initial drop looks amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, as the sequence goes on, the seams start to show a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's front loaded with enough practical work to pull through the sequence,
Sure.
right? They're still in that period where they're like, if we dazzle you with enough practical effects,
You'll
you
forgive
won't
us
mind
this.
you'll forgive us these kind of premature digital effects that we're trying
Yeah.
out. And when we only realize now that that's the way we want the balance to be, regardless
Anyway,
of whether
yeah,
you're gonna
right.
do, regardless of whether you can do one or the other, we don't care. That's the balance. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think that's the reason that the sequence succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
Because not all the effects in it are successful, but that initial
Drop is great.
stunt, which again they learned from the Bond films, right?
Yeah.
It's like how do you continue a franchise? You have an amazing stunt in the middle of your movie,
Right.
that's going to wow everyone and make them forget about some of the shortcomings
Right.
of what you're doing.
I'll forgive seeing the back screen or front screen projection that I'm going to see in
Yeah.
a moment because I have this great front stunt.
Yeah. And I love that they have a great Three Stooges moment as they leap out of the plane as well, with Short Round getting sandwiched in between
Yeah,
the
right.
two of them. And it's at this point of the movie that you clock, oh, they're a surrogate family.
Right.
And you're like, it's kind of, it's kind of cute, but it's also weird because they're clearly not a real family.
Right.
And in many ways, they couldn't give a shit about what happens to each other.
Completely. But what I like about it is that the dynamics aren't forced and they're real and they move. I mean, we're not
Yeah.
there yet, but when we get to the palace eating scene, all of a sudden Short Round and Willie are co-conspirators. They're working together to try and
Right.
get a decent bite of food, And so
It starts out of this marriage of convenience,
Yeah,
and then
right.
they turn into a nuclear family as they go.
Absolutely.
I think the second act of the movie begins here. I mean, it makes it a
Absolutely.
longer second act, but structurally, I think that's the case.
Well, the second they wake up on the river and
Well, it's a new film is beginning.
someone is standing above them, we are
is the
starting the
beginning
next
of-
part of the second
Yeah.
movie in this movie. Yeah.
We've seen the end. We've come into the movie theater towards the end of Indiana Jones and the Treasure of the Peacock's Eye, and now we're in
Right. It's time
And now we're in
to
Indiana
go to
Jones
the
and
Temple of Doom.
Yeah, and you're just like, oh, I can just sit. I can sit here and just watch the next one. And we're playing in a totally different sandbox, right? Cinematically, geographically, Spielberg's pulling from his favorite director, David Lean.
Right.
Kind of trying to make Sri Lanka look like Lawrence of Arabia, which is where parts of it were filmed.
Well, I think later in the movie, Well, no, it's Crusade that they're leaning on that movie. In this movie, they're leaning on Bridge on a River Kwai, on the River
Bridge on
Kwai.
the River Kwai. Well, yeah, Bridge on the River Kwai.
Yeah.
There's also Passage to India as well.
Mhm.
Certainly the racism is consonant with that movie.
Sure.
So it's the other thing that's interesting about it is I remember growing up in the 80s. This is exactly the image of India and pretty much any country in the third world that we had from
Right.
these kind of celebrity charity
Charity.
campaigns,
Yeah, I
like
was just gonna say. Yeah.
Band-Aid, and it was the idea that the third world was just wall-to-wall rural poverty.
hmm
So this totally fit with that idea when you first go into the village, and like it literally just followed on
And eat the
completely.
gruel.
Like you didn't question it
Right.
for a second. And this, I guess, this is where the mysticism of the movie, the kind of religious fantasy aspect, starts to rear
Sure.
its head, because they're immediately worshipped as soon as they arrived in the village.
They're
and
worshipped.
that's the first sign of it in the film. We started in a city nightclub
Right.
over a precious jewel dispute. Which is very real world, and now suddenly we're thrust into a world of the ethereal
Right.
and the religious.
Because not only are they going to be almost worshipped as deities, but now we're going to start talking about the Shankara stones.
Yeah, and we're also establishing the gross out racist food comedy that will kind of haunt the rest of the movie as well.
Yeah.
This is their first sort of testing of the waters of, can we make the best food in the world seem disgusting? And of course, this is like this is that sort of this is where you start to see that diabetes of tone that I talked about.
Yeah.
Kind of ruin the head, because Indy says, "This is more food than these people eat in a week. They're starving." It's like we've gone from overly funny to overly dark, and there's it's just this polarity of excess
Right.
that we have no center to. It's like suddenly you're back in one of those appeal commercials.
It's a little bipolar.
Yeah, you expect Indy to sort of say, for $5 a month, you could feed one of these people.
But unfortunately, I'm going to eat it.
Yeah. And Willie is the ultimate Karen in this scene.
Yeah, sure.
With her blonde perm, a trouser suit, and complaints to the management tinged with racism.
Yeah. Oh, and in that white person Karen way that only a white person Karen can do, she says, "Oh, well, I'm sorry. You can have it.
Yeah. Oh, it's the worst, isn't
You
it?
can have your shitty food."
Yeah. Yeah. God, I've forgotten about that. And this is where instead, in the Bond film, this is where Bond would go and get his mission from M.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the scene where Indy goes and gets his quest against the powers of darkness.
Yeah, right.
He picks it up and runs with it for the rest of the film.
I think I might have made a mistake in our ranking episode, because I think on the IMDb notes I was
You did.
talking
You
about...
put Dial of Destiny above Crystal Skull.
Get the fuck out of here. I'll explain in
That was-
detail when we go into
that
each
was
episode
too
why you're
easy.
wrong, and then probably change
that
my
was-
mind once I watch it again.
I always feel
But-
like apologizing for how easy that was. Go on.
But I thought I had read on the IMDb trivia notes that it was Amrish Puri who was being fed his lines and didn't speak English. But as I understand, I think it was the elder of this community that he
Yeah.
definitely had his lines read to him by Steven Spielberg. And I don't know that Amrish Puri did.
And that works to the advantage of... No, I don't think... I assumed you had other information, but I definitely knew that this wise man character was the shaman, spoke English phonetically, and that really works to the advantages of the characterization.
It does.
Because of all the gesture.
The veil and like the darkness.
'cause he has
coming...
to sort of...
Yeah.
He has to kind of mime a lot of his lines while he's saying them.
But it works.
Because he can't put any meaning behind them because he doesn't know what he's saying.
Right.
It's almost like in terms of like behind the scenes footage that outtakes, that like all time outtake ambitions for me would be to watch the entirety of Star Wars with hearing Peter Mayhew speaking Chewbacca's lines, and I think it would be this scene where you can hear Spielberg
Right.
saying the lines before.
That's great.
It would only be better if it was Irvin Kershner. That's the only other way that it would be perfect. And this, and some, and we didn't talk at all about Lao Che,
No, yeah, right.
who
Great
arguably the
performance,
best villain arguably the best villain in the film,
Yeah.
burned after 10 minutes. But he was the villain of the last movie, the last Indiana Jones movie. But
The one
he
in
begins
between
the trend.
Temple of Doom and Raiders.
He begins the trend in this movie where the characters, sorry, the actors who are English as a second language will end their lines by laughing.
Yeah.
And it starts with Lao Che, and then the rest of the movie you can tell for whom English is a second language, because after every line they laugh, and they laugh, and they laugh, which I think is great. It's a nice little Easter egg.
Mm-hmm.
There's an echo of Jaws here, isn't there, with Short Round imitating Indy.
I saw that. Yeah, I
Gestures.
have that note. I noticed it.
So he's an Indiana. He's an Indiana Jones fanboy, which is something that Luke is a kind of game.
But
that
it goes
Lucasfilm
back
will
to
keep playing.
the family idea as well. You know, the idea
Yeah.
because
For Spielberg.
he's copying his father figure.
Yeah, in the way that what was the name of the boy? You know, I can't remember anything about Jaws.
I think it was Sean.
Sean is imitating Brody.
Yes, it's Brody.
Okay, I'll go right. That was a very Jiminy Glick, wasn't it? So yeah, and this is where we get Shorty gets worried, and Indy says it's a ghost story. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But we, as the audience, know that they're not making it up because we've seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we know that
Right.
heaven and hell and the supernatural exist.
Right.
So, I suppose both the Hindu and Christian
I guess-
version of that exists simultaneously.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess we're giving Raiders a little bit of shit here, saying that character doesn't seem to know that there's that stuff, but he does say at the end, "Don't look at it, Marion." Maybe he did get some. Maybe he got some sort of knowledge that he was able to use.
What did he think was coming out of the ark?
I don't
then?
know.
There's a lot of dead Nazis around here.
Yeah.
I don't remember killing them. And yet, the Sacred Stones, the lightweight MacGuffins.
Yeah, right.
And then, something very Spielbergian, which is children as a
Right.
sentimental device.
And the one child coming back.
Yeah, this is the post-E.T. poltergeist sentimentalization, melodramatization of children in his films.
Sure.
And they're really testing the waters of how far they can go with the darkness by having this still breathing child close to his death in his mother's arms.
Right.
It's kind of funny. Like looking back at it now, I realize that just because of what the story tells me, that kid survived because he passes on information that he had. He could, if he died there, he wouldn't have been able to pass on the information. But I always assumed as a kid that kid just died.
And that's what I always thought.
And I didn't question it, and that's not good.
Right.
That this film sets me up to just go, well, he had his time.
Tough loss.
I mean, talk about getting, being like inured to violence. I mean,
Yeah, right.
It's I guess all those conservative Christians
But
are right.
something else I noticed in this movie, because that sort of thing will be compounded because next they're going to start riding elephants to get to the palace, and I'd never noticed before Short Round saying, "Hey, I'm going to keep this elephant. I'm going to put you in the circus." And I thought, "Oh fuck, that was heartbreaking." He's learning all the wrong lessons.
I'm glad that you thought that. Because I know you haven't listened to Indiana Jones Minute. They make the same points there that it's so tragic that he says, "You're my best friend."
Yeah, it's terrible.
Like his two best friends are an elephant and fucking Fred C. Dubs. It's really fucking bleak. Like, Short Round's future is bleak. I hope we never find out what happened to him. But speaking of Fred C. Dubs, the reason I bring it up is he gets those Humphrey Bogart's character in Treasure of the Sierra Madre. He gets those Fred C. Dub eyes when he considers the prize, when he's looking at the Sanskrit of the Shankara stones.
Yeah, because there's a big kind of emphasis on this movie about fortune and glory.
Yeah.
And that's what Indiana Jones is about, apparently, in this film.
Which is a bit of a retcon, but it's a retcon that I approve of.
Yeah.
Because he always had that fortune hunter quality, and this movie's going to put that to the test.
Right.
Quite literally by saying look, so here's your choice. Are you going to save some kids? Or are you...
Yeah, right.
Are you going to, take this artifact?
But in Raiders of the Lost Ark, he always had this sense, like, he wanted to go after the Ark because it's an important artifact. But within that... there's something in it for me. I want to be the one to find it. I want that fortune. I do want that glory.
Yeah, I was more glory than fortune, though.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of this is not. I realize now watching this, probably the first Indiana Jones film I saw, so I have a skewed perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking of it as the second movie in the series, I get the sense that this is a little bit of a rewrite.
Yeah, I think so.
Of what we've seen, and that sort of lends to the prequel idea, right? The sense that he's like an unrefined diamond in the rough. Like even by the time of Raiders, he's kind of cast off a little bit of this kind of gold prospector paranoia that he potentially has in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now where are you in your notes? I'm basically at camp.
Yeah, more or less. They get on the elephants. There's some good old-fashioned animal comedy. Everything in the village looks brighter the next day. There's a bit more optimism suddenly. We get a good lens flare over Indy's shoulder, which looks cool when a competent director does it with a well-written character.
I guess it was this elephant ride that fucked up Harrison Ford's back, though.
This man, the number of physical ailments this man has had throughout the course of his life.
Right.
I mean, I guess that's what Dial of Destiny is referencing. His kind of Harrison Ford's broken body rather than Indiana Jones's. But yes, you were in the animal campfire scene, so movies become Jungle Cruise in the space of 2 scenes.
Maybe this is me looking at it through my 12-year-old kid eyes, because it made me laugh so much then, and it still does. Everything that's happening.
Specific? Okay. Well, see, I get that, and I don't really have a problem with it, but this is where I feel like the movie doesn't quite know what it has and is putting energy into the wrong areas. Like, this poker game scene between Short Round and Indy, the conversation that Indy has with Willie, that's enough. It's not only is it more than enough, it's stronger when it's not surrounded by animal humor.
All the animals.
Yeah, like I feel like they have to window dress the scene, but the core of the scene is so strong.
Yeah,
and this was Kei Hoi Kwan's audition scene.
It was, yeah.
Because he didn't.
And it was when I think they decided he's amazing. Yeah. We have to have him.
And that's the characterization and backstory and everything that's done in that scene more than stands up on its own.
Yeah. I don't know. So you know what part of it is?
I know what you're saying about 12-year-old eyes, but with my adult eyes, this is one of the scenes I wish they would have restrained themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
More. Because not because it seems like they feel like they don't have enough in the scene to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And the opposite's true.
That I'll agree with that.
Too much.
I think too much
fucking elephants.
Too many animals. Too much fucking animal. But I think part of what I always liked about it was the actual animals in it and the proximity to the actors and how Kate Capshaw specifically. I mean, everything.
I always feel sorry. I always feel sorry for that monkey. That monkey looks genuinely
That
scared of
baboon,
everything
that
and
little
everyone around him.
little monkey baboon, fucking is so close to her. His eyes go wide, and he runs away. And the snake, they had a whole other snake thing planned that they had to cut because she just said, I literally, I can't do it.
Classic actor didn't read the stage directions.
Yeah,
She
didn't
only
read
read the
stage
dialogue.
directions. Exactly. And so they agreed to that, but then he said, you have to do all the fucking bugs. She was like, okay. I didn't know there were bugs, but okay. And then apparently she came back and she said, I'll do one snake. And that snake is just like, that's a huge snake right on her neck. And
Yeah.
to me, the idea of grabbing it and throwing it, I don't think PETA was probably too happy, for one, but also...
Especially seeing what happens to the snake in future scenes.
Yeah. I think it looks great, and it's...
This was all they needed, though. I think this gag, because
it calls back to
it's-
Indy.
because it calls back to Raiders. It's just tighter. Like if
Yeah.
they just had that one punchline that simultaneously called back to Raiders and capped the scene really nicely.
Right.
I just think
All
it
right.
would have worked much better. The film doesn't understand self-restraint, and sometimes that makes it a better movie, and sometimes it makes it a worse movie. And I think just in this moment, it makes it somewhat worse. It's just because it's almost because I'm so invested and interested in what's happening on screen
Right.
that I don't want the distractions.
I guess there are times where I can be won over by a simple line, like, the trouble with her is the noise.
Well, this is great.
That's
All
good
the
stuff.
character stuff in this scene is fantastic, and this is where and it's also a great example of how to do character backstory, because this is the only
Mm-hmm.
time we learn about how Indy and Short Round
Met.
and you buy it instantly. It makes total sense.
But you
and then
also
they're done.
you
They
also
never
get
mention it
some
again.
pertinent information about Willie. This idea about a guy who made a lot of children, very happy, but died a poor man.
during the Civil War.
And, yeah.
Which sort of doesn't really work, but yeah.
But you
He was one of those Civil War magicians.
but you get the sense of what drives her to be perhaps as shallow as she
Yeah.
is. You know.
That's why I think this scene deserved to breathe a little more.
All right.
It'd be. That's the thing. I think scenes like what they do with the animals in this scenes is what you do when your movie's no good,
Mm-hmm.
when your actors are not great, when they don't have chemistry, when the dialogue's not interesting, and it's just not true.
And that's
of
not
this
true
movie.
of that movie, of this
Yeah.
movie, and those actors in this moment. You're okay. All right. It makes me laugh, but I understand.
Stopped yourself from saying you're right.
Well, I wasn't gonna go that far because it still all makes me laugh, but I understand what you're saying.
And comedy is subjective, right? Some
Yeah.
parts of it are going to hit people differently, and that's fine. And it kind of goes from the Jack Hanna show to Cannibal Holocaust again very quickly. That diabetes of tone it's like we're on elephants, we're throwing snakes around.
Now there's
we're
fingers on
scaring
statues.
baboons. It's like, what the fuck?
Don't come
is
up
going-
here.
There's offal on this altar.
Yeah.
Do you think that "Don't Come Up Here" is? I have this theory about like horror films that are a little like where the directors and writers are kind of concerned that children are going to see it. I mean, they should be with this because children are going to see it.
Right.
But they work in these kind of like warnings
Into
It's
the
kind
film
of like
itself,
the-
yeah.
It's actually the indie saying "Don't come up here" instead of saying "Cover your kid's eyes."
Yeah.
Basically.
Maybe. And it
I
might
like-
even be an
maybe-
unconscious thing that
I
Spielberg
think
does.
probably an unconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this all. Oh, I mean, it's incredibly sinister,
Hmm.
and yet also very Raiders as well. Like it
Yeah,
feels
right.
like we're in
Because it feels like the beginning of Raiders.
Yeah.
Something that would scare, well, and it does. It scares the guides, and they go back.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's very much Raiders, where most of his team flees.
And then we get to the castle.
We get to the castle, punctuated constantly by giant vampire bats.
Our home for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Not that we know it at this point.
Right. I'm sure I had picked up on it before, but it was so funny to meet Grady as the British officer. Grady from the Overlook Hotel.
Absolutely, yeah. And so great characters introduced in the scene. Chad Lyle as well.
So good.
He's this kind of we've established this racist caricature of India as just being rural poverty, and now we're kind of challenging it. He's the suave debunk of all of that, right? And it makes sense historically because he's Oxbridge educated, so there's the kind of he's a kind of imperial Indian character.
Yeah,
and all his tensions with the kind of British general. So great again. I think these characters that are being introduced are great, and I'd love to have more of them. And when they are on screen, I'd love there to be more focus on them. We get one of the great stupid people ADR lines of "Shorty, where's my razor?"
Yeah.
To explain why he has stubble in the next scene. as if this isn't the most handsome look a man has ever had. Like, why would he shave?
Yeah, exactly.
Even if he could. I mean, that look is the stubble, glasses, bow tie, tweed suit. Again, another iconic look. Again, the most handsome Harrison Ford or possibly any actor has ever looked on screen.
All right.
So, and Chad Lyle looks great as well. He's wearing a Nehru jacket like Dr. No. Except he's allowed to because he's from India. Where
everything for you goes through James Bond.
No, everything in this movie goes through James Bond. It's like the kidney of this movie. Everything kind of... And there's all this political history that kind of comes up at this point, right?
I was going to say, if you're not paying attention to this movie, you would think that thuggy culture, somebody might mention it to you, and you're like, what are you talking about? That has nothing to do with Temple of Doom. But there it is on screen. People, characters talking about it.
Yeah. And more singing and dancing.
Mm-hmm.
We get to see some traditional Indian music. Willie, and again, we go back to the idea articulated in the opening scene that Willie is a gold digger.
Yeah. She's way into Little Maharaja until she sees how little Maharaja is.
And this is yet another reveal where we're going to see an adult and we see a child instead.
Mm-hmm.
Which again is sort of like the language of sequels is building here.
Right, right.
Every time we think we're going to get an adult character, a child is going to come out.
But it's funny too because you won't.
Admiral Baby.
I mean, Short Round later in this movie, he's going to become full Jackie Chan, but it's it's set up here with Little Maharaja, what we're going to get at the end, which is the dual fight.
Yes.
And so Short Round gets to fight right alongside with Indiana Jones. And
that's right.
I think that's smart sequel writing. If you're gonna add one kid, give that kid his own villain to dispatch.
Give that kid his own kid.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I get a duck? You already have a monkey. Can he get a duck? I guarantee Ben Burt pulled this music that's played over dinner from a tape from a London Indian restaurant when he was working at Elstree. I mean, it's. I guess we got to talk about Snake Surprise.
I guess. I mean, it is what it is. They were just going for gross out.
But
they didn't realize
that's where I defend it.
What it was they were actually doing.
Well, they did. But so the yeah, obviously the intent here is gross out, schlocky, body horror comedy.
Yeah.
Doing it with Indian food gives it a racist connotation.
Right.
Both of which kind of fit the extreme excess
Of the movie itself.
But it's working at that level of stereotype that doesn't even make sense, and then you go back around again and question whether it's racist.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about this again, like
Yeah.
non-specific racist stereotypes, because the two things about Indian cuisine worth knowing: it's overcooked, not undercooked.
Yeah.
And it rarely contains meat. So, whose idea of Indian cuisine this is?
I don't know. Right.
And you know what? In the original script, this was supposed to be a smoking gun.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Something sinister
That's
was
something
going on.
crazy. Yeah.
Because
Indy was supposed to pick up on it.
Indy was supposed to turn to Philip Stone, and I believe the line was, "What self-respecting Hindu would serve meat at his table?"
Mm.
So maybe they started with that intent, but they did not follow through on
No,
that.
not at all.
This is just played up for
So, and it's funny because the one
pantomime value.
in a list of foods that all go too far, the one I always end up taking the most exception to is the soup. Because those are human eyeballs in that soup.
It's like,
So now they're not just weirdos, now they're murderers they're cannibals who are feeding you eyeballs
that's
now.
Jeff from accounting. It would have been so great if that guy they were strapping to the gurney was eyeless. And the short round was like, hey,
that's where those eyeballs came from.
At least we know where those eyeballs came from.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so it's you're right. It is what it is, and it's both racist and not simultaneously.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think. Because I don't think the intent is to be racist, but the byproduct is.
Sure.
But in another sense, it's nice to see again Steven Spielberg going for something really schlocky.
I was just gonna say as schlocky as it is, because
And not
he's so much
caring
more
about-
comfortable with that than I think he realizes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And for whatever reason, he thinks this is the platform for that side of him to emerge.
Right.
I guess it's the kid inside him, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
totally.
No, mate, I want it to be. Don't want them to, they pick out the bugs.
He
and then-
really does just want it to be gross.
Yeah, it's a desire to be yucky.
But there's lots of blind spots in this movie, and that's where I could see people not forgiving it. And this is one of those moments. And I noticed one right after it, because when they're going to bed, Indiana says to Short Round, I think I'm going to check on Willie.
Oh,
And Short Round's got this look on his face like, yeah, you're going to fuck her, right? That's what you're doing now, Indy.
it's weird and inappropriate.
And it's like all the
Shorty's
lessons
ass-
that Short Round is learning from Indiana Jones throughout this movie.
But it's not even as subtle as you just put it, because he says, "You tell me about it afterwards."
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was
There's
just
no
gonna
room
say.
there's no room for ambiguity
No.
there. That's not innuendo.
Right.
Yeah, it's and again, just it's another example like the campfire scene of we've got action at both sides of the table, and there's one that I really want them to focus on, and one I want them to focus on less or not even be there.
Mhm.
Like the conversation they're having, again, it's like great characterization, all the backstory about
Yeah, right.
Indy being considered a grave robber, the Anglo-Indian tensions which are going to come to fruition at the end of the movie.
Mhm.
Like you said, they're setting up the second half of the
Sure.
movie in lots of ways, interesting ways. I love seeing Indy have to kind of defend himself. Something I love as well is the villains are always morally superior to Indy
Mhm.
in all of the films. Like nobody, he gets the moral drop on nobody in this series, and I like Chadalal is just sort of like you're later on. Mala Ram puts the knife in where he says, "Thieves like you."
Yeah.
It's like bang to rights, Your Honor.
Well, now that you mention it, yes, but My heart is pure.
So, but then we go straight into the bedroom shenanigans.
The bedroom shenanigans. The moment they kiss, you notice the swell of music that makes it sound, gives it that serial quality.
Well, after the weird and inappropriate scene with Short Round, the way that Willie eats that apple, we know we're going to be stuck in a sex comedy for the next few minutes.
Yeah, sure.
And they're going for that. So the soft focus comes again.
Yeah, soft focus. You're right.
We keep talking. It's like when did Hollywood movies stop using soft focus? We're in '84 now.
Yeah.
I've been rewatching Moonlighting on Hulu.
I noticed that.
And there's a ton of soft focus on Sybil Shepherd. And let me just say, there's one person who does not need soft focus.
It's Sybil Shepherd. Yeah.
In 1986. Okay. So clearly, it is still a reigning but he's obviously going for the old Hollywood look,
right?
And they're having that kind of big sleep innuendo, nocturnal activities. Mm-hmm. It's like the saddle conversation in The Big Sleep.
I love that they're having this kind of contest between each other to see who can be more shallow.
It's like who can out 80s the other.
Yes, exactly.
And Molaram wins.
Right, right.
But yeah, what do you think of this? Is interesting. What do you think of this real-time set piece in the middle of all this? I always thought this was kind of shaky conceptual ground. Like, not really sure what's supposed to happen in 5 minutes or why it's 5 minutes or. And then they lose interest in it midway through.
Well, it doesn't matter because a fight's going to start anyway, but.
But then why have a real time setup if you're not going to go to the end of the 5 minutes?
Right, yeah. To me, it was always... I think they think that the jokes are funnier than maybe they are. This idea of them repeating the lines that we just heard, that they had said to each other.
Tell you what's good about it, though.
But what I think is good about it is it illustrates how alike they are in their shallowness, and that everybody thinks of Kate Capshaw and Willie Scott as the least of the heroines for Indiana Jones, but in this movie she's the right fit. She matches Indiana Jones in this movie, I think.
Yes, absolutely. It's you get a very clear inversion of Marion, which is exactly what they should have done. And you also, but like Marion, like the way that Marion and Indy parallel each other, Willie and Indy parallel each other. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, it's like this is a different color on Indy.
Yeah,
this
right.
is the sort of because they're both gold diggers.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like again, we're sort of we're developing that idea that this is like an uncut Indiana Jones.
Well, and I guess what I take exception to more than anything is how much shit Kate Capshaw got for this movie.
Absolutely.
Now, part of it, you can tell me that the character is shallow and that the character is less than other heroines, but you can't tell me the performance is.
No, it's not.
And that's what I take exception to. They equate the character to the performance, it seems to me, and that's unfair. She is so winning in this role, I think.
It's just sexist double standards because everything that people point out about her characterization kind of makes her a flawed character, which is what Marion was. It's what every character, whether they're protagonists or villains in Indiana Jones movies are. They always have that shade on them.
Yeah.
And this is just a
different shade, yeah.
And as you say, you can apply everything you apply to her to Indy.
Yeah.
To Indy's characterization. But we don't mind because he's a man and, he's our hero. So,
and she's really funny. When he puts his hands,
she's very funny.
When he puts his hands on the boobs of that statue, and she says, "Hey, I'm right here."
I mean, that's again, we've gone from punching the cigarette girl is airplay.
Right.
This is Naked Gun.
Yeah, exactly.
Point, right? This is an actual Naked Gun bit that they're doing, but the film doesn't care.
No,
I feel like in some respects, even I know it was a few years earlier, but I feel like Spielberg is flexing whatever muscles he flexed on 1941 in this movie. This idea of like anarchic, balls to the wall comedy.
Yeah, right.
I
Because
get
he's
that
doing
sense.
jokes even in the middle of the fight.
Yeah, this is this is well. That was what I was going to say. I like about the sequence is that I'm not sure they think of it as a fake out, but I do.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you think you're going into a kind of romantic comedy scene, and then midway through,
Right, yeah.
it becomes a very disturbing, violent sequence
Sure.
out of nowhere. I love the coming out of the painting.
That's great,
like,
isn't it? Yeah.
movie magic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's again another optical illusion. The series does that so well.
Right.
And then the hanging on the fan
It's
is
heavy.
gruesome.
Yeah.
It's so gruesome. I mean, I like that. I mean, that's good horror movie making because you're not expecting something that violent and disturbing to happen in the middle of this scene.
Well, and also
so...
we see it through Short Round's eyes.
or what he imagines is happening while his eyes are closed.
Yes, exactly. Yes, more to the point. Well, I tell you what, we're about to get to bugs and a delightful set piece. So why don't we take another break?
Yeah, and I just want to say one thing.
Of course you do.
That you're gonna like it because it goes to your argument about Dial of Destiny.
Okay.
Like one of the times I feel like I should give Dial of Destiny a break
Mm-hmm.
is in criticizing the number of back-to-back set pieces there are in there because Temple of Doom is the same.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of degree, not kind, I think.
All right. Well, we'll get to it. And we'll get to this right after this. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. Here we are, back once again, possibly ending up. We're finishing up with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
You know our record on Lucasfilm Productions.
We'll see. As we were going out, Tom, we were talking about getting into the bugs and into the chamber.
Yeah, this secret passage, which feels the most like original recipe indie so far.
Yeah.
But doesn't quite live up to that, I think. It's sort of like it's just like original recipe by an untalented chef at times.
I do like him looking around the room looking for the secret passage or looking for a foe first.
Yeah, that
and then finding the secret passage and the whole bit about I love how disinterested he is in sex in this moment. That's what makes it funny to me. Because there's a moment he has where he looks directly at her when she's saying, right here, I'm right here.
But
and he kind of shakes his head and starts looking around again.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't buy it comedically, so it falls a little bit flat for me.
Oh, man.
Scene. I know.
You're wrong. We'll just leave it there.
This is not my favorite part of the movie by any stretch, though.
You don't like the whole bit?
Hit and miss. Like I think we're getting into the part of the movie that actually this, the Chamber of Spikes is pretty unassailable.
Okay.
But after that, we get into the part of the movie where I'm like, I like this for what it is. I just don't really know why it's happening now. Here in this movie.
What do you mean? We gotta get.
The whole Temple of Doom.
We got to get to the Temple of Doom, sir.
Yeah, when we get in the Temple of Doom, we never get out of it.
Well, sure
Which I
we
guess
do.
is the point. This is what I mean. We briefly get out of it. We're basically there for the rest of the movie. Anyway, we've still got creepy crawlies to talk about.
Yeah.
Or fortune cookies.
Yes, right.
Which is such a white person's view of Asian culture that fortune cookies hadn't even been invented in 1935. They're not authentically Chinese, nor had they been invented.
There's a lot wrong with that line.
Yeah, that's cultural appropriation on so many levels.
Uh,
Yeah, the creepy crawlies are great. It's, again, invert up the ante on the snake pit.
mm-hmm.
I'm into it.
It's fun to, like, when you watch the behind-the-scenes stuff, and they're talking about all the bugs, and producers and stuff are having these big bugs put on them, and, of course, they're harmless, but...
Yeah.
It's funny, you see somebody just sitting there relaxed with you even see Kate Capshaw eventually kind of just sitting there having lots of big bugs placed on her robe, and she looks, pretty
trauma.
Pretty calm.
She's in shock. She's in shock, Mike.
But it looks great on film, everything,
Did you, oh, yeah. Did you see that moment in the making of where, because they're directed by Frank Marshall, so he was just taking a camera on set, capturing
mm-hmm.
Steven Spielberg directing Kate Capshaw in the scene. And just as the scene begins, you can hear her go, "Steven, please, I don't want that on me."
I do remember her talking about...
now, great, now use it.
Yeah. I do remember her talking about, I think that's when she took a pill. And she just came to set and was like, "Hi, everybody." But, one of the things I love about this particular scene, once they get into that chamber, Indian short round,
oh, yeah,
the dynamic between an adult and a child.
How can you read my notes from where you are?
Oh, my God. Everything
the
about it.
Dynamic.
Yeah.
Right? Which is the next two movies.
Uh-huh.
But it begins here with, he's not biologically related. They're not biologically related to each other, but it's the same dynamic.
Sure.
It's like, a really nice touch which shows that Spielberg is a parent, I think, is the moment that after Shorty he says, "Go stand against the wall," and then Shorty presses the button. And
you told me!
You said stand against the wall! And that is... That little detail of the kid throwing back the failed instructions of the parents.
Told me. I did exactly what you told me to do.
Yes.
Love it.
And that's sort of like, and I've been there as a father where you're just like, your kid spills something and you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
And then, when you look back at it, you're sort of like, well, it was just an accident. I really shouldn't have reacted.
Yeah.
But the Indy in this scene is all like, look, just go, just go
because
over there.
That's the point.
Makes it worse.
That's one of the parts that I love the most, is because it's such an honest moment from Harrison Ford as an adult, where he goes, and he's laughing. He's actually chuckling as he says, "Just stand against the wall." I mean, he's literally saying, "Fuck off out of the way and give me a moment." And
Spielberg, I give him a lot of shit, but Spielberg's really good at that kind of... It's not dysfunctional families. It's kind of just... It's loving families that have difficulties communicating.
Yeah, I think it's just honest.
It's that kind of, Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters and the way he deals with his family.
Right.
It's on, it's an acknowledgement that you can love the people in your family, but you all have a difficulty dealing with each other.
Sure.
I mean, I guess the way that film ends up doesn't really support my argument.
At all, but...
I'd rather go up into space than deal with you fuckers. And they just let him go.
Yeah, just off. Well, that's what Daddy felt he had to do.
And the Chamber of Spikes is great.
The Chamber of Spikes, I was going to say, I mean, the editing, the directing, the acting, everything is working together in one cohesive way. And Spielberg himself talks about in those behind-the-scenes making-ofs of that's when he thinks Hollywood is doing its best work, when everything gels together. Everybody doing their job great.
And it's the it's this franchise's variation on the trash compactor,
Yeah, right.
which itself feels like both of them have a common source of a 30s matinee serial.
Mhm.
I bet you find this scene in so many of those.
Sure.
Without doing the research, I kind of get the sense that if it turns up in both Star Wars and here,
For sure.
it was a trope of a matinee serial at some point. Well, and this is another one of the distinctive themes that John Williams has. The da 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 da. That's my reasonable facsimile. Da 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 da.
I love it.
And it again. It's kind of like the cartoon Mouse Stairs. It sort of follows the action. Because when they set the chamber of spikes into motion again,
yes,
the music
kicks up again. It's amazing. The music actually becomes a joke, which I love.
It does, yeah. It's very witty, isn't it? It's a witty use of that music, and then all of Ford's physical comedy with the
everything he's doing, and actually, it's so funny that you can. That Spielberg's able to build tension just through the difference, I guess, of gender, as Willie's slowly coming through the chamber and not wanting to deal with bugs and not wanting to put her hand in. And they are, if you don't do it quick, we are going to die. And the frustration, the physical comedy of hands. From Harrison Ford,
full Jackie Gleason, straight to the moon.
Absolutely.
One of these days, Alice. One of these days.
Touch with bugs, and when he actually gets a point in.
Even the detail.
You're right. You're other right.
The other right. Even that sort of detail is like it feels like they're drawing on thousands of like conversations that they've had with family members in cars.
Right.
About the directions to something, it's drawing on all of that. This is where it feels more like a divorce film.
Yeah,
right. It's just like the struggle. It's a Kramer versus Kramer kind of thing going on.
Except they have to learn to work together. It's that kind of.
But they don't
movie.
have to like it.
Yeah.
I mean, the look on Harrison Ford's face when. It's like another movie
when she passes through the door. You mean that look?
Another movie would have them hug, like that be a moment of understanding between. He's just still furious.
He's so pissed
that it even got that close.
Yeah.
Which is again anti-Bond, right? It's sort of like you're saved at the last second, but you're not happy about it.
Well, and we also have I think we have a shade of Raiders of the Lost Ark when it starts back over and they have to get under that door.
Mm-hmm.
Except for he's not grabbing for his whip. It's the hat. It's the most important thing.
I think this is where the hat takes over in the franchise.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like in Raiders, at some point he could have lost the hat. And I would have been fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he would never wear a hat again.
And you'd be okay.
We go. But I feel like if this scene wasn't in the movie, if we didn't do another hat pull again, the next movie is very hat centric.
Hat heavy.
Hat heavy. It's a heavy-hatted movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is kind of laying the groundwork for that. It's kind of like this movie has a decision to make. Are we going to run with the hat, or is the hat just going to be a prop? And
I think they'd already made that decision even before that, but I get what you're saying about on film. This is where
it wasn't in the tagline, though.
Right.
It's only the next movie.
The man with the hat.
The man in the hat is back.
Yeah.
What do you think of this matte painting?
Love it.
So I think
it doesn't even look as good as other matte paintings, and I still love it.
It really doesn't.
I still love it.
When I use the word cheap,
yes,
I don't mean that it's cheaply done. I mean that it looks cheap.
Yes.
Like it reads cheapness.
Yeah.
Like a bad B movie.
I don't care that, but I think it works for this particular movie.
What situation they're going into?
The situation they're going into, the serial nature of this story and these movies. Yeah. I think, despite the fact that it's not working, it's still working.
I tell you what doesn't look cheap.
The
titular Temple of Doom.
The Temple of Doom set.
Walk in the first time.
That's one of my notes. I wrote down that everything about this set, the scale of it, the intricacies, like the little touches they put in, Everything about it is good.
And they stage it.
Except that one rock that they use for pole vaulting.
I don't have any rationale behind this, but I feel like only you would pick out that detail. I just, the other thing that struck me this time and never thought about before is the kind of play-like staging.
Yeah, right.
That's what helps create the incredibly sinister vibe. It feels like, well, this whole thing. I mean, we've only been playing with the idea of a horror film so
right.
far.
Now we're fully
Here and
embracing it.
We feel like we're
The
in the middle
slow
of a
walk
slasher
that
film
we
and
have from Mola Ram up to the victim, I feel like any other
Yes.
director would not have been as patient as Steven Spielberg is, because you see the bald head approaching before he gets close enough for us to get his eyes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it shows me, one, the actor, and then B, the director working at a level together where you can build the dread within the hearts, minds, and souls of your audience like you would in a horror movie.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, the chanting, sacrificial cult fire, blood and heart ceremony. I mean, we're in a diabetic coma right now.
Right.
we're pure. We need some dark chocolate to get us out of this fugue state. Because it's, yeah. I mean, it's again up to the previous film and the film up to this point feel like adventures. This feels like a torture scene.
It is.
What am I saying? It feels like a torture. It is a fucking torture scene. Why am I tiptoeing around it? And body horror is the kind of central focus of the scene. We're introducing a new villain, as you said, with Mola Ram.
Now, see,
we've had two already. We don't know one of them is a villain yet. But,
I think we could guess, but
it's very clear that Mola Ram is our final boss.
and I love him.
Right?
I mean, you say that he seems like a step down, but everything about him and his performance, I really love. I think he's great.
I don't think Mola Ram would be out of place in our proposed 80s sitcom, That's So Mama.
That's why he works. Let me put it this way.
So,
it's like, is Belloc a better villain? Yeah, but
yes.
he is.
And yes.
But he's not a good enough villain for them to have made a video game on Atari. Only Mola Ram can go to Atari.
That's an interesting color you put on the word good there. I feel like we should check some of those assumptions before.
I love everything about him.
There's another movie here where Mola Ram is Chad Alal, and I'm interested in what that movie might have been. Because when you pitch your tent to Mola Ram, you're gonna take the film in a Scooby-Doo direction. If you had Chad Alal turn out to be Mola Ram, I feel like you get more. I think it would work with the horror of it, the idea of this dual personality.
Yeah.
And I think you could cut out the middleman and it would be a lot scarier. I think Chad Alal could have been probably the best villain in Indiana Jones if they'd have figured out
how to.
If they didn't feel like they needed this front man, I guess.
The performance is so good, though.
Oh, I have no issues with. Listen. I enjoy it on a superficial level, like I enjoy pretty much everything in this film, and he's definitely very scary, in a theatrical way. But I don't know. I feel like this movie throws a handful of good villains at you, and it's just not my favorite of those necessarily.
All right.
Let's talk about a heart being ripped from
man's body. Let's do that.
Because I feel like it warrants a conversation. But it's interesting because you will have seen this scene more times than I have. For a very specific reason, which is that...
You about to call me old?
No, it's not one of those times. that does add to what I'm about to say. No, it's because we're from different countries.
Mm.
So this
It was different for you?
the actual visualization of the heart being ripped out and the chest closing was cut from was banned in the British version of the film all throughout my childhood. So every time I would see it on VHS, even on like the VHS,
Wow.
it was completely gone. Like
Didn't
it
exist.
was the British, the British, the BBFC kind of censor board that just took it out of any.
I
version of
blame
the film to see
Thatcher.
the UK. So so I don't know. Sometime in the
So yeah, when did you see it?
10 years.
Really?
I mean, whenever I came over here, because it wasn't.
And
available to me.
what was your thought the first moment you saw it?
Well, it's interesting because I grew up thinking Spielberg specifically cut away from that. But
did you see the heart? Did you see him holding the heart and it catching fire?
You kind of see him reach, and then yes, you see the heart going on fire, but everything between that was gone.
Interesting.
So I thought it was a directorial choice, and that because it was a movie aimed partially at children, that they didn't go. And so to learn that it was kind of full frontal, heart ripping action.
Yeah.
All along that had been taken out, it definitely changed my perception of, and maybe I was, maybe I was in the camp that thought, is it really that horrific? That's, it's a lot is made of that section of the movie is really horrific, but it's inarguable after learning that was visualized.
Yeah, right.
That it wasn't just a cutaway.
No. And it's the whole reason we have PG-13, which is. And that was per a conversation between Spielberg and whoever was the head of the MPAA then. He said, "Isn't there something we can do between PG and R?"
Because I got this one scene I really don't want to take out of the
movie. It was after this came out. He said, "Look, I might have done you dirty, and thanks for the PG, but why don't you give us something in between?"
Does it? And this is the other sense where I feel like I'm coming to this. Not as a lifelong viewer, but just as someone who's only seen this a handful of times. But does it make you flinch? Because it really makes me flinch. When the heart... It
doesn't.
No? When the heart seals up? I feel that inside me.
Oh, I feel it, but I also...
I just like, it makes my body kind of like... Well, I guess that was the point. It makes you feel like your heart's been taken out of your body.
Yeah, what I like... I think that there's so much you could talk about within that scene because the animation of it, of the chest coming back together, to me, is one of the things, visual effects wise, that looks superior to other things in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, say, the raft going off the cliff into the water, like against a matte painting.
Yep, no argument here.
That, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what I also like about it is the performance of the actor who looks down and can't really fathom what the hell is going on right now. Why am I still alive? And so I kind of, even as a kid.
Also the questions of who is that guy? What role does he play in this
doesn't matter. None of that matters.
Did he talk too much like Willie? Is that why?
Whether he was a volunteer or a forced to volunteer.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, and I would have been 12 when this movie came out, it wasn't a bridge too far for me. It didn't make me extremely scared. It didn't, I was enthralled by it in a whoa kind of way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It chills me to the bone, but again, I don't know if my perspective is skewed by it being relatively new to me.
Mm-hmm.
Being only used to the censored part of the scene.
Yeah.
And I suppose once you get to the heart going on fire, hearts on fire, and Mola Ram, does the ESL laughing.
Yeah.
That it's like you're sort of like, okay, so now we're in Scooby Doo. But
I
something
think we
that-
always also kind of focused on what happens afterwards too, or
there's a
Om
great
Nom
character.
Shabbat.
There's a great character moment here for Willie
Mm-hmm.
because you when she's covered in the bugs, you just as the viewer, you're like, come on, get over it.
Right.
And when you see her like reacting to what's happening, and suddenly you're like, well, I feel for you.
She has to turn away, and that's almost
And
hyperventilating.
Even Indy's like, yeah, this is
This is a bit much.
see, Willie, this is what you should be scared of.
Yeah.
This is the level you should be pitching it at.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this was what J.J. Abrams was going for with the Sith planet in Rise of Skywalker?
Calm
Like a
down, would you
beige
please?
Beige version of this.
Take your agenda somewhere else. Also, you're probably right.
But then, of course, doing like the end of the commercial voice there.
Yeah.
And then Willie goes back into gold digger mode, which is like,
Yeah.
diamonds.
Diamonds?
It's like they're willing to throw away the horror they've established for the cheapest possible gag.
But I like, so they burn him up, and also reality is not afforded this man. Well, no, reality rears its ugly head against this man that it doesn't against Willie, because he catches on fire even before he gets into the lava, which is what would happen.
Sure.
But
well, that's one of those previously advertised cliffhanger moments that Spielberg
right.
has no idea how to cheat his way out of.
yes, exactly.
And he doesn't have a week between episodes to figure it out.
To figure it out, right? But
Great dialogue in this scene as well.
Yeah,
I feel like this scene about you're gonna die going after your fortune and glory, maybe,
Mhm.
but not today. I feel like that's an exchange that they keep trying to recreate in the next couple of movies, and they never get it.
they never get to this. Yeah, it's never as good as that is. But I was speaking in the ranking episode about how this movie references the movie that preceded it.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite moments when he goes down and he gets the Shankara stones, and he, first you have that kind of character moment of, oh, this is my fortune and glory, and it's like glowing on his face. And when he puts them away and he gets up and that cobra is staring at him, that statue cobra, and he tips his hat to it.
And
then,
is that cobra supposed to be mechanical? Because it moves.
oh, I didn't notice it moving.
And I always wondered whether it was an alarm snake.
Oh, interesting. High tech in the Temple
Also
of Doom.
And sparing use of the bullwhip, right?
Yeah, right.
He never uses it more than 3 times a movie.
Mm-hmm.
As this is the second time we've seen it in action. It's not quite a weapon, it's not quite a prop.
Right.
Which is great. Although it is like as much as I buy into this morally ambivalent version of Indiana Jones, it is a little hard to take that he just forgot about the kids. Because he hears them screaming, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I was here to save the kids." I mean, that's a sociopath. That's not an anti-hero. That's full-on psycho.
Not just that, but he leaves his family, such as it is,
Yeah,
where they are to go check on these kids.
it's literally like
I actually love it though.
His
like-
dilemma is: do I save these kids or do I take these stones?
Or do I go? Yeah.
Which is, I don't know. That ambiguity is explored in far more subtle ways in Raiders. This is very on the nose.
Yeah, right.
It's like there's a right answer and a wrong answer.
Yeah.
Which there isn't necessarily with the Ark or with the Idol.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
There's no easy answers there because it's a 70s movie that just happened to be made after the 70s was over. But this is an 80s movie where it's like we've got to see the moral contrast clearly.
Right. Sure.
In the sharper image came into my mind. I was like, why did that come? Because of course it was like a big thing in the 80s, wasn't it?
Well, I also getting into the sloppy hero aspect of it. I love this moment where he goes behind the doors of the Temple of Doom to see all the kids working in the mine. And
concentration camp, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Yeah. And then he sees...
This is a sensationalized version of what Spielberg would later explore with Schindler's List, I think.
Well, lo and behold, what does he see? He sees Pat Roach down there whipping a child.
In brownface.
So he takes a rock and throws it at his head.
Yeah.
And what I love is the idea that this character is kind of so clueless, because Pat Roach turns around and sees him and starts yelling, and everybody starts like kind of climbing up after him, and it takes him a second to stop being so fucking pleased with himself. He's sort of smiling at the fact that he was able to hurl that rock at him. Really makes me laugh.
It's great. I like the story point as well that, well, we already know that they've been discovered because of that great jump scare on the balcony, which again proves Spielberg was a real loss to the world of slasher cinema.
Mm-hmm.
That face popping up on the balcony, which is one of those moments in a movie that I can never predict exactly when it's going to happen.
Right?
See it, so I like the fact that the audience is watching the scene with the knowledge that it doesn't really matter what Indy does in this scene; that he's pre-fucked.
Yeah, right.
And he turns, because that's not what. Possibly that's snake alarm, but throwing the rock makes no difference, right? Because he turns around and they're already there, and they do their knife pull.
And they do the knife pull, right?
And it's just like, I like that we explore him making the moral decision in real time, but I'm also glad that the plot doesn't hang on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm glad that that's not the reason he gets caught, and otherwise he would have got away with it.
Yeah, right.
I like this sense of, no, you're in the Temple of Doom. I mean, it's
right
up there in the title. You're not getting out of the Temple of Doom because it's the Temple of Doom.
Yeah, it would be great if it was in neon above the skull in the Temple of Doom. It just says Temple of Doom.
And then, but some of the letters have gone out. So it's Temple of Dom. Mulleran's like, what does it say up there? It actually says Emple of Om, but and my next note is children in cages.
Well, and our heroes.
Yeah. So one movie from the mid-'80s shaped an entire political party's immigration policies. Right here. There's some right-wing movie that begins with like begins with like Donald Trump sitting in the movie theater in 1984 going, "Kids in cages."
That's what this movie got right.
I gotta find a way to become president so I can make this happen.
Yeah. So these following scenes with the blood of Kali, you almost threw up a little bit there in your mouth.
Well, that's what the movie's trying to make me do. First of all, these skinny kids freak the fuck out of me every time.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what machinist-like lifestyle Spielberg inflicted on these kids to make them look this way, but I don't like thinking about it.
I still like that, as dark as this moment is, or this portion of the film, Spielberg is still trying to pepper comedy in. When Pat Roach walks up to a bound, and well, not gagged, but a bound Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones just says, "Hi."
Well,
right before he's force-fed the blood of Kali.
Dare I say we need this so we won't shoot ourselves in the head?
Perhaps.
Because let's think about what's going on in this scene. He's being force-fed demon blood.
Mm-hmm.
He's being tortured via voodoo doll.
Yes.
He's being whipped like Jesus. And yeah, this is where Molaram hits him with the thieves like you.
Yeah, right.
He's also like a reverse Yoda, or Yoda from the prequels. Because he says, "You will, Dr. Jones.
You will."
You will." At the conversation they have, I don't know if there's any specific polls in there, but it reminds me of Dr. No, the conversation Bond has with Dr. No in that movie. What a vivid imagination.
Yeah, I love that line.
Sounds a little bit like, the old world domination.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whipping feels like another step too far, like full-on bondage in a kid's movie.
It's it's the adding of the whipping of Short Round.
That's where you draw the line? It's
Yeah.
pretty bad when it's happening to Indy, too.
Well, it's not good for our hero, but there's that part of you that knows he's an adult that got
Like
himself
a
into
spin
this
doctor for
situation.
this movie. It wasn't optimum.
Yeah, exactly.
We had some issues.
He was stealing from them. He's getting his comeuppance.
Well, I mean,
But leave the children alone.
Yeah. And we did. This is what. Well, I don't know where we realize, but this consolidates the fact that this is an inversion of the Nazis because they're another extremist political sect.
Mm-hmm.
But this time it's religious rather than politically based.
Right, but let's talk about that inversion for a moment too, because this is the only movie, well, not the only movie, but
Without Nazis?
basically the only movie without Nazis. We have
Commie
Russians in the kingdom of the
Commie
Crystal
Nazis.
Skull, but they're just surrogate Nazis.
Yeah, these aren't surrogate Nazis.
No, yeah.
This is, and even the voodoo doll thing, which you think is like a westernization of the kind of thuggy cult that this is based on,
Mm-hmm.
has precedent. I mean, I don't think it was like it's like a Indiana Jones stuffy the way it is in this movie, but I do believe that they experimented with voodoo, or
Okay.
like an equivalent. So it's unusual. It's like there's moments in this movie that get unusually kind of historically, culturally specific, and this is sort of one of them because they're not talking in general terms about what's going on. They're talking about Kali, they're talking about the Christian God. It's very clear where these people are coming from. They have a viewpoint. And Indy gets poisoned for the second time in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But this time it isn't fun hijinks.
No, yeah.
So
This
I guess
time it gives you the cramps in your candle room.
it's the... Again, sounds very dirty, cramps in your candle room. But actually, the real version of that is more disturbing than what you just said. I mean, first of all, the force feeding of the Kali blood, the visceral terror of it is palpable.
Mm-hmm.
And, credit to Harrison Ford when he becomes bad Indy. Or
right.
Or at least worst Indy.
Mm-hmm.
He plays it
Full on.
perfectly.
Yeah.
I do wonder why we feel the need to do this in sequels, because this is Superman 3 territory.
Yeah, I know, right. Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
But he's great as bad Indy.
Yeah. Very much so.
Very believable. Too believable for a kid who might not understand that this is a convention that he's going to go back to being good.
Mm-hmm.
It really fucks
But
with
I can remember seeing that as a kid and kind of seeing it through Short Round's experience and eyes, I mean, obviously he gets captured and he's not drinking the blood, but he's got to escape. He's got to get into the chamber. And that idea of him saying, it's me, it's me, it's me, and him getting hit. And he's in tears when he has the torch and says,
"Oh yeah,
Indy, wake up, please!" And when he burns him and finally wakes him up, and then it's so weird that Steven Spielberg can get a moment of comedy out of something so dark when when Indiana Jones says, "Wait, he's mine," and he's like holding him over the lava pit that they're about to sacrifice Willie into. Mm-hmm. And raising his fist to hit this child and says, "It's me, kid. I'm okay."
Yeah.
And it's like popping that balloon. It's that sigh of relief that we're all gonna be okay now.
And boy, do we need it.
Yeah.
I think he's great reacting to when he's getting whipped as well. He has this look on his face that is really, I really like the acting choice there. It's like it's not just physical pain; it's also annoyance. Like
Yeah, right.
It's like imagine being whipped all day. How fucking annoying that would be, in addition to everything else.
Sure.
And then and Harrison Ford, body by Jake.
Yeah.
Even sexier when he's eviler Indy. And then Chad Lal is just there, and we're like, oh, I guess he's part of it too.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And there was a deleted scene where Willie managed to get away, break free of the knife pullers, and she got back into the bedroom and saw Chad Lal, and she was like, "Oh, help! You gotta save me!" And he pretends that he's gonna save her, and then reveals that he's the villain. So,
Oh, I see.
I guess they felt they didn't need that. I'm not sure they necessarily did, but it is a little bit weird when he just pops up. I guess I
never felt like that. Like he doesn't seem like the nicest of people.
Sure, but that could be a red herring.
Yeah, true.
And that he actually could be an ally. But anyway, he's there.
Yes.
And this is where sort of we see the Marion inversion, because she's
we also get Little Maharaja. He's there too.
Yeah, he's the active heroine has become the powerless female victim. I mean, even when Marion was bound and gagged, you didn't feel like she couldn't fight back, but which plays better to the horror of it. But there's some gender representation problems in there,
right?
And it's
I think it plays into the horror of it and the serial nature of it.
And the slasher, because it's like, this is a repeat kill, isn't it? We've seen...
Yeah, right.
We've seen the sample kill. We've talked about this in Friday the 13th, the training wheels kills.
Yeah, and now we know how it will go if it does happen.
And now it's potentially going to happen to one of the lead characters.
But I hope that the previous guy who had his heart ripped out, I hope his ghost is in that chamber somewhere, and he's saying to himself, oh, all I had to do was, like, cover my heart with my one free hand, and he wouldn't have taken it?
Yeah, it's like, because they start off. You can sort of see how they, you can see the writing process. That's like, okay, so we've set this up. How does Willie not have a heart ripped out in this scene?
Right.
And then they're just like, I was like, okay, so Mola Ram can make this Indy's first sacrifice. It's like, okay, that'll delay things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do we do from there? It's like, I don't know. I guess he just has to decide not to do it this time.
Yeah, totally.
For no particular reason.
Luckily, he's a good enough actor that you almost buy it.
Almost.
Like it's only a couple minutes later when you go, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, you're just like, why is she getting the VIP treatment?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the spit, the spit in the face. A lot of bodily fluids in these movies.
Yeah, right.
Far too much saliva for my liking.
You can't get away with that in the COVID days.
Yeah, it really stings, doesn't it?
I don't think so.
No, absolutely.
It would have to be CGI now.
And this is where Spielberg comes into his own. A child hero saves the day.
Yeah, right.
He does he goes through the video game ladders to escape. I like the wake up Willie, wake up as well. Like the same year as Nightmare on Elm Street. Spielberg said he wanted it to feel like a nightmare, and they're kind of playing with nightmare imagery here.
I like that she hits him.
Yes. And
yeah, completely.
Also, and they don't really explain why Short Round thinks that fire will cure evil.
No, there's no sense of why this should work, but it ends up working, so we're good.
We're like the writers on day whatever. It's like, it's too fucking hot. We've been in this Temple of Doom for so long.
Right.
Please, let's just do it and hope we get away with it.
Well, and he gets the stones back, and finally he does. The kids are on his mind, because when they say let's get out of here, he goes, "Yeah, all of us."
So is that implying that Willie and Short Round have also forgotten about the kids?
Perhaps so.
I tell you what does work in that scene, and I guess they just thought that the emotion would outpace the narrative plausibility.
Mm-hmm.
When Short Round said, "This is one of my cry moments," where he says, "Indy, you're my best friend."
Oh God!
I mean, it's
yeah,
sad
it
when you
kills me.
think about it in Asteroid, and you say he's got
Absolutely.
him, he's got this fucking loser and the elephant.
That's
but
absolutely.
in the moment, it's very.
It should
touching.
not be. It should. It should. He should not be his best friend.
No,
But
no.
when he declares that he is, it gets me every time.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautifully done. And again, I don't want to think about what Spielberg does to make children cry because I've heard stories and
Yeah. Right.
definitely taking a leaf out of Wes Craven's book, but. And then what is going on here with the worshippers? Are they happy or sad? I've
I
never
don't know.
known. They're kind of cheering, but are they going, "Yeah, kill them," or
They
"Yes, we're
seem
free"?
They seem against it at first, and then wait, this might be okay for us.
They're like Death Star employees, right? They're just
Yeah,
like,
totally.
whichever way the tide is turning at that particular point. As long as they make it out of the Temple of Doom alive, they're happy.
What do we want? For whoever to wins to support us.
But this is where the production design comes into his own, because suddenly that mote of fire makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they had stopped this, the worshippers presumably would just kind of
Just attack.
just attack. But now they're separated by a mote of fire, so they
Right.
can't.
They can't get there.
And this is where we get to the... Well, it starts with Shorty imitating the punches, so he's doing more Indiana Jones impersonation. And then he sort of... well, he's already done his martial arts routine, hasn't he? Earlier on.
No, he'll do that down in the mine shaft.
He's done a little bit of it here. He's done a few kind of...
He has a few
drop
kicks, yeah.
Yeah. And then we get the most Scooby-Doo moment of the movie, which is the laughing trapdoor escape from All Around.
Oh, so good.
And this is where it's like you feel like the writers at this point don't have a grip on cause and effect. How does he
Also-
get out of it? Trapdoor.
Pretty sure that's in that video game.
Well, you know what else is in that video game? The quotable from the ranking episode, doesn't he? Isn't welcome.
Oh yeah,
Make it-
welcome.
Maybe the line was written for the video game and it only makes sense in that context. And
Well,
Chad
now, how do
Wall's
you-
totally playing the role of the Bond henchman who won't give up.
I like that. So he's getting stuck on that wheel, and he's getting probably his ribs cracked. But there's a moment where he seems to get out from underneath it, and he's just sort of rolling around on the ground while Willie and Short Round and Indy are all hugging each other, and he's just sort of like, "Ow, fuck."
Yeah.
They're like, "Yeah, he can't attack again, but we can't say he's just gone."
Yeah, I feel like we've sort of lost narrative grip on the scene at this point. They got out of the Temple of Doom somehow, but they've not really got out. And their situation.
No, because they got
to quote a later movie, their situation has not improved.
not improved. But they got to get, all of us out. And the first thing we'll do is see Indy silhouetted in smoke and light.
Yeah, he's a modern day Moses in this scene.
And this
It's
is
a
another
360
music.
character turn from where we started. He was child skeptic at the beginning of this film.
Yeah, right.
He's full on let my people go.
This is another music turn. No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
And we haven't even mentioned
So good.
which is a variation on the da 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 from the Anything Goes opening as well.
Well, I love everything about this fight.
Oh, with Pat Roach?
With Pat Roach, with the kids starting to attack their attackers, with
It's like
Short
Oliver,
Round.
isn't it? Where
Yeah.
they break out and they kick out the table settings like it's Oliver the musical.
I can remember, like, with Indy walking around on those planks up above and people shooting at him and just barely missing him, and close-ups of it going just behind his feet and that kind of thing. I can remember seeing the commercials of that and getting really excited. The whip portion where he swings across while everything's going on at once.
Yeah.
Loved it.
And again, like how anyone can question. I think people have an issue with the whip swinging in Crystal Skull, and I'm like, fuck, Temple of Doom did the same thing. Anyway, it's and this is it's a sort of meta-filmic callback to the original movie because he's fighting with Pat Roach, but Pat Roach is playing a different character.
Yeah, right.
And it's one of the great disappointments of the series as it goes on.
I know.
That we didn't have.
We don't get more Pat Roach
in every film. I mean, if you establish this convention, you've got to follow up on it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in the third movie, so there's no excuse really.
Yeah, right.
They really fluffed that one.
They fucked it up.
But
Oh, this is also my
like
favorite pointing moment.
Oh, is this it?
Oh, when he swings across and people are shooting at him and he points at Short Round and he says, "Short Round, quit screwing around with that kid."
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Does he say screw? Does he say monkeying? Creep monkeying around with that kid.
Does he?
I think he says monkeying because it sounds more old timey. It's good old fashioned poverty. I like the I like the moment when Willie and Short Round realize that Indy's outmatched, and she goes, "Okay, save him." Like,
yeah. Oh, I love that so much.
He's so sloppy.
I love that she's trying to protect Short Round right up to the moment where she knows that Indy is outmatched.
I mean, the rest of the scene plays out like an actual cartoon. Not only because Willie is playing Olive Oil from Popeye, but also the kind of conveyor belt thing reminds me of may have been the inspiration for Wallace and Gromit cartoons. It just feels like the way that suspense is done in those cartoon shorts is the same here. It's like a very simple idea. We've got to you can't fall into that rock crusher. You've got to stay out of the rock crusher. I guess video game as well. Like it's a video game idea.
Well,
why does
should we take another break?
Well, I think we're gonna have to because we're not gonna get through the bridge in this segment. But
all right, let's take a break then.
Yeah,
we'll come back because we'll get to the minecart.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we got.
You have to split this episode up.
Got a handful of set pieces to deal with.
I'm crying out loud. All right. We're bad hosts. We'll be back right after this. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
stay on target
and check out the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
stay on target.
Find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
stay on target.
That's the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. And we're back, actually finishing up with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the 1984 sequel. This movie's so good.
It's getting really good again.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
I think the low point has passed, and we're back in where, like I say, I think it has a really strong third act,
Mm-hmm.
and what do you call it? An unassailable first act.
Yeah. I mean, I had mentioned
second act, and the second act's fine. You like slasher movies?
Yeah.
Great.
I think I'd mentioned it earlier in the episode, but the idea, the kind of duality of indie and short round working together for each other.
Yeah.
The shots that Steven Spielberg has of them fighting, Indy punching Pat Roach, kind of rack focus, I think, up to short round punching Little Maharaja. It's all good shit. That I remember thinking as a kid, that made me think I could be on an Indiana Jones adventure.
Well, I think that was the purpose,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
totally.
That's why you would have basically a member of your audience in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does Indy try and save Pat Roach, or does he actively construct his escape so it will end in his death?
I think both.
Okay, but which is it?
I think
You can't have both.
I think at first he is willing to try to save Pat Roach. When he sees that it's useless, he realizes that this is going to be my escape up to the rafters.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Again, bit spin doctory, but I'll accept it. But it's interesting that, I don't know, this feels very Spielbergian in terms of perspective on the world. It's like children can be saved, but adults are kind of lost causes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's sort of like that, there's no redemption for Pat Roach, but Maharaja Kid can live a good long life
Yeah, right.
as a good guy.
It was the Black Sleep of
And
Cali.
Yeah. If everyone pays attention to what he says, which they don't.
No, yeah. Well, then it's off into the minecart. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to say was nothing in this movie felt more serialized than when Willie Scott first gets into the actual minecart, and we go from the action adventure music to the love theme in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it so much.
It's like sometimes John Williams' medleys are incredible, and especially the medleys he does. I've been listening to the soundtrack for this movie, and some of the medleys he does of these various themes is seamless.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's some of his most memorable music. I wouldn't say necessarily some of his best music, but it definitely answers my criticisms
All right.
of his work.
Well, then it's off
Is
into
this-
the
is
mine
this-
carts.
Yeah, is this the rightification of the franchise? Is this where Indiana Jones: The Ride was germinated?
Yeah, I mean,
Because it seems this whole sequence seems to be making a very simple point of me. It's a roller coaster ride because you're actually on a roller coaster.
well, and they even talk about that in the making of that. It's very much like a roller coaster ride. So, yeah.
Yeah. But
But I'll tell
we
you
talked
what.
about this in the
Oh,
rank-
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. Well, just repeating that. I think nuke the fridge and jump the shark
Mm-hmm.
are the common use terms for when a media property
Goes awry.
shits the bed. First of all, shit the bed is fine. We don't need another word. But I would go skip the minecart because the most ludicrous things that happens in any of these movies is that minecart going off the rails and going back exactly on the same rails.
That's the most ludicrous thing, but I think it's wrapped up. I think the movie acknowledges that it's ridiculous a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not saying I have a problem
So-
with it. I have a problem with the people who have a problem with
Okay, good.
it. No, I'm not. I'm just saying you can't turn. It's sort of like as someone once said to me. You can't go to Hamlet and say, "Where are the elephants?" The guy was talking about like a comedy that had been reviewed as if it was a serious drama in a newspaper, and he said, "You can't go to Hamlet and say, 'Where are the elephants?'" And I was like, it's always stuck with me. What a great
Who
analogy.
said that?
A friend of mine called Nick Hall, who's actually a stand-up comedian now. We were in
Oh,
a
man.
show together at the Edinburgh Festival, and our show, which was an adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe stories, was severely criticized in the media for being not being scary enough. But what the reviewer didn't realize is that we'd adapted his comedic stories specifically. So, he was basically criticizing something that
he didn't understand.
They didn't understand. So he says, you can't go to Hamlet and say, where are the elephants?
That's great. I love it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I love about this scene.
Yes.
I won't say that it's seamless, but I think it's damn close to seamless. The work they're doing between practically shooting things in miniature, how good the miniatures look.
I even suspect there's some stop motion in here.
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought I detected
really?
some stop motion. I mean, it's...
Because then I love it even more.
Well, I know. That's why I bring... There's a moment where I'm like, I think that's stop motion. And if it is...
Because they're also... I mean, they're using not a lot of track. They're like building a track inside of a...
Again, like the wrong trousers, Wilson.
Yeah, right.
But
But all they're doing to cover that is just changing the lighting as they go around.
it's just so easy, isn't it?
It's so easy.
There's so many easy solutions to
your
problems like
problems.
that no one ever thinks about anymore.
Oh.
Problem solvers. That's what ILM are.
Mm-hmm. And it also has one of my favorite moments, because I don't know if it was planned or not. The moment where one of the henchmen are on the back of Indy's cart, and Indy takes a swing at air and thinks the guy has fallen off the cart and smiles smugly over at Willie in Short Round just to have the guy jump back on him. One of my favorite moments in any Indiana Jones movie. I love it.
Yeah. I also like they have a mini cliffhanger of Short Round being divided between carts.
Between carts, right.
And it feels like the battle for Short Round's soul almost. It's sort of like is he going to be saved by these white Western Christians, or is he going to?
Because the moment where he actually separates,
his Oriental roots.
The moment where he separates and is actually getting into the cart.
Yeah. I really thought they were going to do a
he's
Freddy
still
Krueger
so
arms
unsafe, even though he's away from the henchman. In that moment, he's still so unsafe because they're up, they're just too far out of that cart and getting ready to get hit by something.
Yeah. And this whole idea, the minecart and then into the flooding.
Mm-hmm.
Again, set pieces coming thick and fast.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of flooding a mine shaft will be used a year later in A View to a Kill for the finale as well.
Yeah.
With none other than Alison Doody, who's going to be the heroine.
Right, yeah.
The Bond connections are myriad. I like the water joke, not because it's necessarily a good joke, but it feels it feels like a joke from a comic strip.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure it is. I mean, the whole opening of Raiders was from a DuckTales comic. But now that we've left the Temple of Doom behind, we can do big dumb jokes again.
Yeah, right.
It's like, we're outside now, it's okay. Oh, I forgot to mention that we've been inside the Temple of Doom for a very long time, with one exterior shot in the last, 40 mince, 50 minutes, something like that.
Since they've arrived have we had...
We didn't sign up for this.
Not since they've arrived have we seen sunlight.
And of course, to give the behind-the-scenes context, again, this is Spielberg fending off Lucas, because Lucas wanted this to be a haunted house movie.
Yeah, right.
And rather than giving him what he wanted, they in every movie there's a concession to that idea. So in this one, it's Temple of Doom, which is actually a big part of the movie. In the next one, it's the German castle, which is one scene. And then in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's the, I'm going to say, Conquistador's tomb, for want of a better...
Hey, fine.
I don't know.
Don't know what else to call it.
The place that's surrounded by the living dead, or the Uga.
Apocalypto.
Yes, exactly. So that was all Spielberg basically trying
Well, let me put it this way.
Lucas at bay.
Keeping him at bay. what's funny is, you know, you have the flooding of the mine shaft. This is one part where I think Spielberg struggles to plausibly deny how fast water moves and how far ahead they can get of it. But we've been in the Temple of Doom for so long. Once they get outside and push each other to the sides, I would like one character to go, "Hey, it's daytime."
Yeah.
You
right.
know? That's how long we've been in the Temple of Doom.
Well, pretty much, yeah. The exterior shot is at night as well, so they've been in. I don't know. I mean, they could have been in there a week.
Mm-hmm.
A lot I mean, it's a lot for a day.
Well, it seems like it's overnight. It seems like it's one night.
I know,
right?
but when you think about what's happened since they went into the Temple of Doom,
It's been so much time. Yeah, right.
It could also be weeks.
Yeah, totally.
And we go straight from one set piece into another, and to me, this is
Into a third one.
What's the third one?
Well, we're coming to the bridge.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm taking the bridge as one.
Oh,
yeah,
I was going from the mine shaft to the flooding to the bridge.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're
Yeah.
not wrong. It is that relentless, isn't it? But the bridge, which, you know, I feel like if you have to lose one of these sequences, which might not have been a bad idea, I would take out the mine cart and I would just have the bridge.
Oh, the bridge is so good. I thought for a half a second, I thought you were going to say take out the bridge, and I was going to
No.
end this Zoom, drive to your house, and punch you.
It's
Physically assault you.
It's stunning. It's a stunning set piece.
It's
and
unbelievable.
Even before we get to the bridge, well, Willie and Short Round are on the bridge dicking around, but we get one of my favorite moments of fan service in any sequel,
The gun?
which is forgetting to bring the gun to a knife. It doesn't really make sense that it's a prequel, but anyway,
Yeah.
if you can look past that, they've got it's a callback inversion, right? He's
Right,
sort of like
totally.
It's like we know the famous, you know, the scene. He gets surrounded by people with knife skills,
Mm-hmm.
and he shoots them. Right, and that's what he's intending to do here, but he doesn't have a gun.
But he doesn't have his gun because Willie dropped it.
So we get the amusing diversion of a callback inversion to Raiders, but it turns into the sequence that we were that we were deprived of in the last movie. We were deprived of an elaborate fight sequence.
Yeah, right.
They made the right call there, but now they're making up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know the story goes that the knife guy was really pissed that
That he
Ford-
had done all this work, yeah.
yeah, he'd done all this choreography. So it's really great that in this movie you get to see what that would have looked like. Because you get a full-on fight sequence. And it still ends with a kind of, you know, a laugh moment
A joke, yeah. Punctuated
Yeah,
with a joke.
of, again, based around the idea of excess, where Indy looks... And again, this is
Down the
every
barrel.
movie, Indy looks off camera, right? He looks...
He does
there's
look
something
above it.
off- Yeah, he just looks out into camera.
But he's so close to it
But we never know what he's seeing.
until we do.
Until we do, but that's the gimmick every time, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like he's seen something. It's actually the only point in the movie he's ahead of the audience.
Yeah, right.
And there's one moment in every movie like that. So I think it works really well. And that's even before we get into the bridge.
Well, and so, yeah, I mean, that's before the bridge, but once we get to the bridge, it's almost as interesting a story off screen as it is on screen.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they had one take
Yeah.
to
Or even
To
just it
split the
being
bridge.
built by these
Wow.
engineers that just happened to be there.
yeah.
You
It
know what
really
I
is
mean?
bridge on the River Kwai.
Yeah.
You can imagine this like Alec Guinness like leader of the team.
Well, and when you look at it, to me, it truly does seem like a feat of engineering, because I can't understand how that bridge is so sturdy.
Yeah.
But the first time Harrison Ford saw it, he just started running across it as Indiana Jones with his machete without a care in the world. To hear Steven Spielberg talk about it, and Steven Spielberg wouldn't go more than 40 feet out onto that bridge on
Again-
either side.
again, this movie could have been the Trail of the Pink Panther. Really, could have been just
right.
whatever footage we had of Harrison Ford,
Mhm.
and then a subplot about him going missing.
Yeah. And I think
it's
this,
just-
this
it's
bridge
so
moment
brilliantly
leads.
staged.
Yeah,
shot, timed.
everything about it.
It's Indy's version of the Kobayashi Maru as well,
Mm.
because it's the no-win scenario.
Yeah, right. I know what Kobayashi.
No, I know,
means.
but it's
Don't you condescend to me, motherfucker.
but it's like it's kind of it's the rite of passage for pop culture character, isn't it?
Yeah.
To beat the no-win scenario, which he does in his own uniquely sloppy way.
Yeah, exactly. In the only way he can.
Because he's actually, it's like he had two options and he chose a third that only he would think of.
Right, yeah. And what I think one of the things I love about it is in the sloppy hero category, we get that moment that you really don't ever think you're going to get in an Indiana Jones movie, in a PG movie, where he just says, oh, shit. So the jokes that they use are fantastic.
With the cursing, it's you have to ration it, don't you? You get one.
Yeah, exactly.
In a PG movie, you only get a couple. So you have to wait for your moment, and this is exactly the right moment.
So the right moment.
I remember my teacher at school, whenever we'd watch PG movies, I think it was Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh,
She'd
yeah.
stand there by the volume
Turn it down.
button and turn it down when she knew the shits were coming.
Yeah. That's funny.
Live audio mixing of Harry and the Hendersons.
Oh, man. I love that his sloppy hero-ness will go so far as to put his friend's life at risk. Like, he
Yeah.
tells Short Round what he's going to do in Short Round's native language, and Short Round just says, hang on, lady, we're going for a ride. And,
It's also
and her
good that-
reaction
Yeah.
when he raises the machete up, and you
But
can just see like the zeal in his eyes of, I'm about to do the worst thing. I'm going to complete the worst idea in the history of mankind, and I'm kind of excited about it. And she
But it
says,
also-
"Oh
yeah.
my God!"
But it also speaks to how the relationships that they forge between them. That she clocks instantly what he's gonna do.
Yeah,
And you have to know the man to know the
right.
decision.
Yeah,
So that's what like no, because she doesn't she's not fluent in Short Round's language, but she picks up on the context clues, which is that he's gonna make a bizarre decision.
he's gonna go nuts.
Crazy.
Crazy is what she says. You're right.
Yeah, I love the touch of when they get on the split bridge, which now has become a ladder. So I guess it's another set piece at this point.
This whole thing, by the way, I mean, it's filmed on like 3 different continents and put together seamlessly.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and with an intermixing of practical and digital as well.
So great.
I love the touch of Mola Ram pushing down the henchman as he climbs up.
Yeah.
And that's where I think he wins the 80s war in this movie, because he's it's classic 1980s CEO. It's just like, I'm
Yeah.
literally climbing the corporate ladder and burning
Pushing you
everybody.
down.
And-
And I think,
And
well,
I
I just want to
yeah.
say too before we go on, because I think you briefly mentioned it, but the engineering feat of blowing up that bridge,
yeah.
and the idea, because there were steel cables on it, so they had to like put little miniature bombs on these steel cables with puppets that could kick their arms and legs.
The answer is always puppets.
Yeah, it's great.
The answer to every special effects problem is puppets.
Puppets.
Why don't people still realize this?
Oh my God.
I tell you what,
and they have one chance. They have one chance to get
Yeah.
it right. They've got like 5 to 7 cameras going on this thing at once. And when you see the behind the scenes footage of it going,
Yeah.
you're seeing exactly what you see on screen, and you just think it's perfect. It's perfect.
So something else, and the detail is it's Orson Welles level of cinematic detail. That great story of Orson Welles filming a snowstorm in the reflection in a window, just because it was the right thing to do. Because he is like, no, well, there's a world going on off screen. We need to see it.
Yeah.
And they do a similar thing here where they didn't need to do this, and yet when you see it in the film, you realize that they couldn't do without it. They put dust on the bridge.
Yeah, right,
So that the dust falls
Falls.
as the bridge falls.
right.
And you realize that you actually can't do without that detail.
Mm-hmm.
But the foresight to think, oh no, but dust would fall.
Right.
I mean, again, it's like thinking on a whole nother level
Yeah,
that is not just about what you see on screen, it's about building the world on screen.
right.
Because that's past use. That's not what
Yeah,
you're seeing on
exactly.
screen now.
Right, right.
We have to allude to the people who've walked on this bridge before.
Before.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. And I praise the distinctiveness of John Williams' scoring in this, but I gotta say, this music for this scene is the Ewoks in reverse. I couldn't resist it.
Clearly.
And Mola Ram is, he's got a bit, hasn't he? He's not going to let the bit of the heart ripping go. He's sort of
No,
like,
yeah.
it's not enough to kill someone. You have to rip the heart out before you do it.
I mean, throughout this whole scene, he's got moments that I love. I like that Indy tried, before the bridge blows up, when he threatens to put the stones over the bridge and just throw them away. And Mola Ram just kind of calculates and says, "Go ahead, Dr. Jones. They will be found. You won't." Great.
It is great. And there's kind of a stop hitting yourself moment where he's
Yeah,
kind of like
it's like-
hits Mola Ram with his own heart ripping
Yeah.
fist.
Well, in that moment, I always ask myself, why does he choose to make a fist in that moment, Mola Ram?
The sad fact is that Mola Ram wins because he says he'd turn Indy into a true believer, and now he did because,
Yeah.
according to this scene, Indy is now converted to Hinduism.
He
He says you portrayed Vishnu, is that what he says, or Kali? No, not Kali.
Kali. You've betrayed Kali, I think he says.
Well, no, Kali is the blood. Is the
Yeah, but maybe
I'm
he
not
does say
well-versed in-
Vishnu.
yeah, but he's full on. So Mola Ram essentially won the day because he did turn Indy into a true believer.
Well, the other thing I like is because all of a sudden he's going to give some kind of incantation to, you start asking yourself, how the fuck does he know to make these stones glow without? It seemed like he just learned earlier in the movie. Oh, put them together,
But
So
isn't it a combination? Isn't it a? Does he need the incantation? Isn't he just doing that for dramatic effect, or do you think that's what makes the stones burn?
it seems like it looks to me like that's what makes the stones burn.
Interesting.
But by the time I start asking myself, we know that he's a learned man, but by the time we get to Crystal Skull,
yeah,
like he's speaking the language that seems like a dead language of people
Yeah.
climbing out of rocks. That it's like he's got too much knowledge, entirely too much
much.
fucking knowledge.
too much fucking knowledge. Yeah. And this is like a mini version of the Ark opening, right? The burning,
Yeah,
the diamonds glowing, burning through the handbag.
yeah. Plus, it's
And then
kind
the
of
hot
punctuated.
potato.
Yeah, it's punctuated
potato.
with a real cartoon Peanuts, Lucy and Charlie Brown kind of moment.
And then, how evil must this cult be that the British Army are your cavalry?
Yeah, right.
These are the oppressors.
These are the bad people.
But I mean, this again, this is playing with that boys' own fiction. Well, for the cavalry comes from Western
Sure.
media, the Western genre. But this whole idea of the kind of Zulu idea, this whole kind of mythology around the British Empire and their kind of tales of daring do, which is what Michael Palin was riffing on in the Ripping Yarn series.
Mm.
And it all comes to and I was about to do because it's really going to disprove my point. I was about to do the music of the British Army arriving and say, "Oh, what another great distinctive theme!" But I realized what I had in my head was the walking music from the Vespan City, Cloud City.
Oh.
I was about to go da 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 da, which is the Vesper music. So
You're trying to reprove your point.
my prejudices are just so ingrained. I
Yeah.
can't help myself. And this is the first cliff resurrection we get from not the last, the first cliff resurrection of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, right.
which gets hammier and more protracted in each sequel. But this one, you think this one would milk it for more, but it doesn't milk it
No.
at all. And when I was a kid, it was moments like this that made me acutely aware of the key differences between James Bond and Indiana Jones. When you see him come up from the cliff side, bruised and battered, because I knew, even as a kid, I was like, James Bond would never let himself get into this state. Think about The Spy Who Loved Me until the Daniel Craig era, of course.
Yeah, right.
But, Roger Moore in the desert in The Spy Who Loved Me, just with his tuxedo over his shoulder. And compared to this, that's the difference. That's why they're different.
Right. Even his hand that brings the rock up is bandaged.
He has to wear the scars.
Yeah.
And only Daniel Craig's Bond wears the scars. This is interesting. Are we still supposed to believe he's gonna run away with the stones at this point?
Oh, I don't.
Because when he produces them on the cliffside, it's like, still a piece of shit, though.
Yeah.
Still
I
thinking
guess
about
you're
the
right,
fortune
yeah.
and glory. I think it wants to make it wants the next scene to resolve that rather than this scene.
Yeah, because they do have
Because
that
he could have
moment
just
where
let them go, right? He could have just been
Right.
It could have just been like the Grail in the next movie, or he doesn't necessarily let the Ark go, but he's just like, okay, I guess it's time to stop chasing that.
Yeah. But Willie has that moment too when they return to the village. He's like, "So you gave it back? You're giving up your fortune and glory?" And that's where he
Yeah.
says, "Yeah, they just put it in a museum." But you're right in the sense that
I'm temporarily disillusioned about museums.
Yeah.
I was in favor of them. I will be in favor of them again.
Oh, I'll be
I'm skeptical.
I'll be totally in favor of them soon enough.
Within the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the village, where I know it's because darkness is lifted, but it looks extra idyllic in the village, which sort of doesn't help.
Yeah,
the
those
message
crops
of the
grew.
mo-
Those crops that died, they grew back fast.
They grew back fast, and everything's bright and colorful again, and life is good. The children haven't even cut. They seem to have learned how to live without the children.
Yeah.
They really need to come back at this point.
The children are going to come back, and they're not even really out of their chains yet.
And I can't believe that Spielberg waits this long to celebrate the multicolored beauty of Indian life and landscapes after all the harm he's done to those people in this movie. Now, after all that, you're gonna show the beauty of Indian life.
Yeah.
And guess what? Laughing Boy's back. This time, though, he's got something legitimately to laugh about. He shouldn't have been laughing before when his people were starving and the children were gone, but now he's...
But now
the children aren't back yet. This might be premature laughter, actually.
I think he sees them. I think that's why he's laughing.
To me, this is where, if it was going to be a great movie, this is where the movie would end. They would come over the hillside, the children would appear in the background, and we go into a 70s helicopter shot like the end of a Dirty Harry.
Dirty Harry movie.
And I realized that that would have been unsatisfying because you would leave it on a cliffhanger of, is Indy going to give them back the stones or not?
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of like that ending. It is more 70s, I acknowledge. It's probably not something they would think of in 1984, but everything that comes after this is just a little kind of sick.
It's hammy because you get the kiss, you get Short Round covering his eyes.
It's like at the end of an unsuccessfully comic Star Trek episode.
Yes. It feels more sitcom than anything else.
But also, mid-80s Spielberg's never going to resist the low-hanging sentimental fruit of the parent-child reunions.
Absolutely.
He's not going to run away from that at this point in his career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is where you're reminded, it's like, oh, he's going to go from this into the beginning of Raiders. That doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
And that fabricated Indy Willie tension, which is kind of belabored by this point.
Mm-hmm.
Although
You
this is the
seem
third time
you
he
seem
uses the
like
whip
they
on
would have
her.
worked past this in their relationship.
Yeah, you'd think after he nearly sacrificed her to
Yeah.
a thuggy cult.
To both
that-
lava and gators or crocodiles.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
And then the elephant blows water in their faces.
as it should.
Although again, this is again like I thought that when I rewatched this, knowing that this was post Spielberg and Lucas divorce, I'd feel all of that in the Temple of Doom scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of them being cockblocked by a bunch of kids, I'm like, that's Spielberg being honest about parenting and
Yeah, right.
why he might be in a situation where he's now divorced. So, and that's the end of the movie.
I mean, well, why don't you give us a credit check then?
Yeah, John Williams starts playing all the film's music at once. There's a cacophony of themes. Great separately, but a little overwhelming when they're played together. Chief hairdresser Colin Jameson. Hairdresser Janet Jameson.
Oh, nepotism.
What is their relationship and how do they feel about their hierarchy? Indian advisor Christy Janaki Rathod. How much shit did this crew member eat during this movie? Excuse me, I did.
You guys are being a little bit racist.
Yeah, no, I don't know why it's Woody Allen. No,
Yeah.
we don't eat that in our country. No, we don't.
Nobody
Effects-
eats smaller snakes out of a bigger snake.
If indeed that's what's going on. That's because
Yeah.
there's contention about that too. Effects creative consultant Phil Tippett. So that's
Oh.
what made me think that maybe there was slow motion in some scenes. The heart wound closing's got to be stop motion.
Stop
right?
motion.
Yeah.
That I agree with. Yes, that looks like
Heart
stop motion.
stopping motion. Matte photography David Fincher. Yes, that David Fincher.
Ooh. That's
But
a
I
good
also want
poll.
I feel like I should mention the other matte photography credit, which is Deborah Morgan, because I bet being underneath David Fincher, she never even gets any mention. So Deborah Morgan did matte photography too. Everyone.
All right.
The pilots of the plane at the beginning get a featuring credit. Was it so important to have those two actors play those roles? All
I
they
don't
do
know.
is laugh, like every non-English character in this movie,
And jump.
jump out of a plane amid feathers. First and second boy in cell are end credits that definitely signify you've been to some dark places in your movie. You see that credit, you know some shit's gone down. And finally, physical conditioning for Mr.
Yeah.
Ford.
Body by Jake.
by Jake Incorporated.
Saw that.
Some credits just need to be read in their entirety.
That's good stuff.
Sure is.
Oh my.
Good stuff, not great. Good memoirs, not great memoirs.
Yeah.
Do you remember that from the George Bush episode of The Simpsons? When he's finishing his memoirs and he goes, "Good memoirs, not great memoirs,
Yeah.
but good."
Yeah. That's right. I love how much they dislike each other.
And the Jerry Ford button is the
The forward
key to that
button.
episode. Do you like hot dogs and beer?
I do. All right. Anything left for you?
No.
We certainly said it all.
Literally my heart has been pulled out of my body. It's currently on fire.
We're gonna have to go over the definition of literally.
Well, this movie doesn't clear anything up about
No, you're right.
At what point does the heart stop beating?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This is our favorite. I feel like we're in the minority, but I also feel we're right.
I feel like we've offended some minorities as well, but that's a different story.
That's this movie's fault.
Well, we can pretend that that's the case, but
All right. You're going to have to tell us what you think. So, find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, find us on Nothing Else. Send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. His name is Tom Stewart. He's from Lonesome Whistle Productions. I'm Michael Shantz. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next time, we're talking Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The last of the good movies, we think, in this series. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potatoes. I felt like I should save that one for the end, because it seemed that the movie would be harder to defend if I began with that.
Agreed. I like that you didn't try to affect any kind of accent.
Well,
That's
was
the
other
right
issue.
choice.
It was the right choice. Also, Short Round is awfully interested in Indy's balls throughout this movie.
Yeah.
No time for love.
Hold on to your potatoes. Very good, then. That's it.
It's over.
Go home.
Go
What are you
home.
What are you doing still listening? You're listening to great music is what you're doing. We'll be back. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Na 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 na. That's really good.
Wrong great music, sir. All right. Thank you.